Chapter 310. After Zhou Xuanji discussed with the others, he decided to head to Great Qin alone. Back when he was still weak, he had dared to go around recklessly, let alone now that he was number 2 in the world. That day, he stepped on the snakeskin sword and flew north. His flying speed was extremely fast, and he disappeared into the horizon in the blink of an eye. Along the way, he flipped his right hand and took out Old Mother One Yi's blood bead. "Do you know anything about the 10,000-year princes?" Zhou Xuanji asked. Over the past few years, he would occasionally send Old Mother One Yi out to do some ideological work. As time passed, Old Mother One Yi calmed down. She had been sealed for countless years. Now that she was in the Tianxia map, her situation hadn't changed. It was just that she had changed places. Thinking of this, she felt much better. 10,000-year prince? Has a 10,000-year prince appeared? Old Mother One Yi asked in confusion. Before Zhou Xuanji could reply, she continued to mutter to herself, "Strange, why would the 10,000-year prince appear now? Could it be that the main body's awakening?" Before, Zhou Xuanji had asked her about Tian, the Sword Saint, and Great Emperor Heartless. She didn't care about the heavens, but she admired the Sword Saint and Great Emperor Heartless. Although she was sealed most of the time, she relied on the 12 ghost generals that she had trained to gather information and understand every era. Great Emperor Heartless and Sword Saint Shi Shinzong had left a deep impression on her. After learning about the appearance of these 3 fellows, she was puzzled. Now, the 10,000-year prince had appeared. She felt inexplicably uneasy. That's right, they did appear, and there are 2 of them. Zhou Xuanji looked ahead and said softly, "If Chunban Tian was also a 10,000-year prince, then he had to subdue him. With 2 10,000-year princes, how powerful would the Emperor Sword Court be in the future?" He wanted to surpass Great Emperor Heartless and nurture a few more great emperors before ascending together to the upper world. Just thinking about it made him happy. "You too? How could this be? Could this be the heaven and earth epic?" Old Mother One Yi exclaimed, her voice filled with terror. The bead of blood began to tremble, which made Zhou Xuanji frown. "What does world epic mean?" he asked. He suddenly had a bad feeling. The heaven and earth epic is when the main characters of the world change. To put it simply, the human race is about to decline, and a new race will take control of the world. When my father led the human race to rule the world, he had 2 10,000-year princes under him. That must be the case. Otherwise, why would Heaven, Sword Saint, Great Emperor Heartless, Tianxia Map, the 2 10,000-year princes, and me appear? It's over, it's over." Old Mother One Yi's voice was filled with despair. If the human race lost their position as the main character of the world, she would also perish. After all, her fate was connected to that of the human race. The main character of the world was going to be replaced? Zhou Xuanji frowned. Could it be that the demon race was going to rise up? But more than half of the demon race's top combat power had died. How could they rise again? Could it be the Ghost Clan? He fell into deep thought. "Father, what you said back then was true. The human race can never be the main character of the world forever," Old Mother One Yi said dejectedly. Her voice was low and filled with despair. Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji felt quite annoyed and harumphed. The human race hasn't been destroyed yet. Hearing this, Old Mother One Yi felt as if she had been stabbed in her heart, and she cried out angrily, "This is the will of the heavens. Neither you nor I can stop it. Even if my father was alive, he would not be able to stop it. Back then, the human race had the will of the heavens, so no matter how bad the situation was, they could rise again. You don't understand how terrifying the will of the heavens is. It's something that mortals cannot change, not even immortal gods." At that moment, all of her hopes had turned to dust, and boundless terror devoured her heart. "The will of the heavens?" Zhou Xuanji said disdainfully. "I don't believe in the will of the heavens. I only believe that humans can defeat the heavens. Just watch. With me here, the human race will not be destroyed." He was not boasting. This was what he thought. After all, he was not a native creature of the northern wilderness, and his soul came from another space-time. As such, he did not believe in the heavens. Old Mother One Yi fell silent, not moved by him. She had lived for countless years and had seen people more arrogant than Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji put the blood bead back into the Tianxia map and thought to himself as he flew. Daoseeker had said that someone was plotting against him. Now that old mother when he said that the world epic had arrived, he could not help but think about it. He even suspected that all of this was Daoseeker's doing. 10,000 Swords Divine Mountain. Within a tall mountain, there was a gloomy palace. Within the palace, candlelight flickered, making the atmosphere a little eerie. Shi Shinzong was cultivating on a jade bed. His back was straight, and he wore tattered black clothes. His face looked ancient, and his hair was a mix of black and white. His entire being gave off a deathly stillness. The man in the woven rush raincoat suddenly appeared in front of him. He lowered his head slightly and did not show his face. Shi Shinzong, what are you waiting for? With your current power, you can sweep across the world, the man in the woven rush raincoat asked. His voice was calm, and he did not sound like the legendary sword saint. He did not show any fear either. Shi Shinzong did not open his eyes and said indifferently, "Why would I care about the future generations? I'm cultivating for the sake of the human race." After that, he opened his eyes slowly. His brown pupils shone brightly in the darkness. "Why did you revive me during the world epoch? Who are you?" he asked as he stared at the man in the woven rush raincoat. His tone was still indifferent, as if he did not fear the man in the woven rush raincoat at all. "Who I am is not important. Since you understand that this is the world epoch, you should know your mission, to control the human race. Only by uniting can the human race have a chance of survival. Otherwise, you alone will not be able to change the situation," the man in the woven rush raincoat said as he lightly laughed. The man in the raincoat chuckled. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly twisted his body, and a sharp sword appeared out of thin air in front of him, almost piercing his sword. Shi Shinzong stared at him, his eyes flashing with a cold light as he said, "You want me to become your puppet? The human race has its own path. If we encounter any changes in the heavenly Tao, I will block them all by myself. Who cares if they are demons or monsters? If they want to take over the human race, they will have to ask my sword first." The man in the woven rush raincoat slowly retreated and shook his head as he smiled and said, "Shi Shinzong, you're still so arrogant. Don't look down on the future generations. The current young emperor and sword emperor's talent is not inferior to yours, especially the sword emperor. He became the second strongest in the world at 30 years old and can fight against great tribulation scattered immortals. Be careful not to be surpassed by him. Also, your senior, Great Emperor Heartless, has also come to the northern wilderness region, as well as two 10,000-year princes. Perhaps you will become their stepping stone." He loudly laughed before disappearing into the darkness of the palace. Shi Shinzong was expressionless as he closed his eyes and continued to cultivate. Great Qin's palace. Within a courtyard, Chun Bantian was surrounded by a group of beautiful palace maids. There was a palace maid sitting on each of his legs, and her hands wandered about. Behind him, there were palace maids massaging him, and in front of him, there were palace maids feeding him fruits, causing him to smile so widely that he could not even close his mouth. Back when I met the Sword Emperor, he was still looking up at the world's top 100. Back then, he was being chased by powerful enemies and met me by chance. I saw that he had decent talent, so I gave him a few pointers. Who would have thought that this boy would have an epiphany and breakthrough on the spot? Chun Bantian sighed as he spoke, his expression filled with nostalgia and happiness. Calm. WonderfulBookhouse.com. Chapter 311. Wow, Your Highness is so powerful. The petite maid sitting on Chun Bantian's left leg covered her mouth and said. Her face was filled with admiration. The other maids cried out in amazement too, which pleased Chun Bantian greatly. He pretended to be deep in thought and said, Zhou Xuanji is incredible. I predict that he will become the top cultivator in the world. Of course, it's only temporary because I will become the top cultivator in the future. Without my guidance, how can he achieve what he has today? The maids all flattered him. and his heart almost flew into the sky. At this moment, oh, a voice came. Really? Chen Bantian was stunned. He looked around instinctively, but did not see anyone else. The maids also looked over. Who dared to interrupt in the royal garden? Zhou Xuanji suddenly appeared on a huge tree. He sat on the trunk with his right leg crossed and stepped on the side with a playful smile on his face. Chen Bantian shuddered and stood up abruptly. The two maids on his legs fell to the ground and cried out in pain. Although Zhou Xuanji had matured after 20 years, he could still recognize Zhou Xuanji immediately. He wore a black robe with golden threads. He swallowed his saliva and asked helplessly, "Senior Zhou, why are you here?" His legs were trembling, and even his voice was trembling. The maids were stunned. "Senior Zhou?" Could it be they opened their eyes wide and sized Zhou Xuanji up? Wow, so handsome. It was their first time seeing such a handsome man. His confidence made him look like an emperor who looked down on the world. Not only was he domineering, but he was also elegant and had the demeanor of a prodigal son. "I'm here to listen to your bragging," Zhou Xuanji said with a faint smile, which frightened Chen Bantian so much that he knelt down immediately. I was wrong," he said awkwardly. Caught in the act, he had no way to defend himself, so he could only admit defeat. He was not ashamed to kneel before Zhou Xuanji. The person in front of him was already the second in the world. Even if the emperor of Great Chun knelt before him, no one would feel that it was inappropriate. "Ask them to leave. I have something to say to you." Zhou Xuanji jumped down from the tree and walked toward Chen Bantian as he instructed. Seeing how he walked, the eyes of the maids almost turned into flowers. "Hurry up and leave. You're not allowed to tell anyone that Senior Sword Emperor has arrived. Otherwise, your 9 generations will be exterminated." Chen Bantian glared at the palace maids behind him and berated them. His heart ached. These girls had never shown such love-struck expressions in front of him. This was too much of a blow. After the palace maids left, Zhou Xuanji sat before the stone table. Chen Bantian stood beside him and poured wine for him. He smiled coyly and said, "Senior Zhou, what do you want to say to me? If not for Zhou Xuanji, you would already be dead." Although he was the one who gave Zhou Xuanji the Tianxia map, Zhou Xuanji obtained the Tianxia map by himself. In his heart, he still remembered the favor of saving his life. Zhou Xuanji swirled his wine cup and said, "You're in big trouble. Yang Di, Tian, Chief Monk Xuanhe, and other top-tier experts are all coming to capture you." Chen Bantian was stunned. In the next second, his expression turned into one of horror. "Sunlight Emperor." Just these 2 words were enough to make his hair stand on end. "Senior Zhou, why?" "I don't have the Tianxia map," Chen Bantian hurriedly asked. Ever since he had awakened the Yellow Dragon royal bloodline, his cultivation had been growing rapidly, and he was now about to break through to the astral projection stage. However, this kind of cultivation was not enough to face top-tier experts in the world. Zhou Xuanji did not hide anything and told him about the 10,000-year prince's background. After hearing this, Chen Bantian felt both delighted and nervous. He was quite intelligent and said straightforwardly, "Senior Zhou, take me away. When my strength increases, I will come back to inherit the position of emperor. I don't trust Yang Di or Chief Monk Xuanhe. I only trust you." He believed that Zhou Xuanji would not lie to him. If he was captured by someone else, he did not dare to imagine what would happen to him. However, he was not afraid if he followed Zhou Xuanji. After all, he had followed Zhou Xuanji before and knew how he treated people. Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, "I'm here to save you. Go and tell your father first. I'll wait for you here. You'd better hurry. Perhaps Yang Di will descend today." Hearing this, Chen Bantian hurriedly bowed and quickly left. After he left, Zhou Xuanji drank wine by himself, feeling quite at ease. Things were going smoothly, and he was in a good mood. It was a pity that good times did not last long. After a while, a familiar voice resounded throughout the royal city of Great Chun. "Umitba, this old monk Xuanhe has come to visit the emperor of Great Chun. I hope that the emperor will allow this old monk to enter the palace." Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji frowned. The royal city of Great Chun was in an uproar. Chief Monk Xuanhe, the Lord of the Sanctum, is here. It's said that he's the top monk in the northern wilderness region. He made the greatest contribution in getting rid of the Tanhua sect. It's said that he once suppressed the top evil cultivator. What is he doing in Great Shun? Could he be recruiting disciples? Recently, many sects are recruiting, and the Sanctum is no exception. It's possible, but I don't want to be a monk. I'm in a dilemma. The arrival of Chief Monk Xuanhe excited the cultivators of Great Shun. After all, Dongyuan Monastery was above the empire. Zhou Xuanji saw a group of people flying out from the palace to welcome Chief Monk Xuanhe. At this moment, Qin Bantian appeared before him and said anxiously, "What should I do?" Chief Monk Xuanhe is already here. If I leave now, I'm afraid that he will make things difficult for my father. Chief Monk Xuanhe had a good reputation, but after escaping, he did not trust anyone other than Zhou Xuanji and his companions. Zhou Xuanji muttered, "Let's pretend that we have already left and see how he reacts. If your father is in danger, I will act immediately." Qin Bantian nodded. Although Chief Monk Xuanhe was the top monk, he was not the second. He was not even in the top 10 in the world. Zhou Xuanji brought Qin Bantian under the tree and took out a scroll to activate a concealment spell formation. This scroll was made by Daoya Old Man. It could conceal one's body and aura. Each scroll could only be used once, and it was extremely costly. Soon, they saw Chief Monk Xuanhe's silhouette. He was talking and laughing with the Emperor of Great Shun as they flew into the main hall of the royal palace. Zhou Xuanji did not use his divine sense immediately. He had a feeling that Chief Monk Xuanhe would scan the entire royal palace with his divine sense. Within the time it took for half an incense to burn, a powerful divine sense scanned the entire royal palace. With Daoya Old Man spell formation, Chief Monk Xuanhe could not discover Zhou Xuanji and Qin Bantian. "Senior Zhou, what's the situation?" Qin Bantian asked anxiously. His father had treated him very well, and he didn't want anything to happen to his father, especially if it was because of him. Zhou Xuanji calmly replied, "Don't worry, Chief Monk Xuanhe is nothing. A true powerhouse is here." Qin Bantian's eyes widened, and just as he was about to speak, Zhou Xuanji's gaze became cold. He looked back and saw Xianyuan Zhou 10 meters away, staring at Zhou Xuanji. "You really didn't die?" Xianyuan Zhou ignored Qin Bantian and said to Zhou Xuanji. His voice was cold and murderous. "Calm. Wonderful bookstore calm." Chapter 312. Zhou Xuanji looked at Xianyuan Zhou without any fear and laughed as he said, "I was thinking the same thing. So you didn't die." Qin Bantian did not know Xianyuan Zhou, but there were not many people in the world who dared to speak to Zhou Xuanji like this. He quickly hid behind Zhou Xuanji, feeling extremely nervous. Xianyuan Zhou took a step forward and said, "I don't want to deal with you right now. Give me the 10,000-year prince, and I can let you live a little longer." He already understood Zhou Xuanji's strength. 5 years had passed, and this brat must have become even more powerful. Once they started fighting, they would attract even more experts. At that time, it would be troublesome. Zhou Xuanji disdainfully laughed as he said, "Xianyuan Zhou, even though you're Tian, your strength is just too great. Do you really think that I'm your only opponent? This brat is fated with me. If it wasn't for me, he would have died long ago, so he can only belong to me." He deliberately provoked Xianyuan Zhou. Heaven did not have a good reputation in the northern wilderness region. Although heaven claimed to only target those with Emperor Qi, every heaven would endanger the peace of the northern wilderness region. Hence, in the legends, heaven was a demon. Once Xianyuan Zhou's identity was exposed, both the righteous and demonic paths would come to hunt him down. This was why Xianyuan Zhou didn't keep a high profile. Even if he came a Great Shun, he would sneak in. Xianyuan Zhou narrowed his eyes, and a murderous aura spread out, causing Qin Bantian's body to turn cold. "Who can stop me?" He stared at Zhou Xuanji and asked coldly, "Xuanhe, divine monk? What a joke." He didn't think much of the monk. "I can." An indifferent voice sounded out, and Zhou Xuanji, Qin Bantian, and Xianyuan Zhou all looked over. A man dressed in luxurious golden robes stood on the palace walls. He was like a towering mountain, giving off a domineering aura, as if he was looking down on everything in the world. Sunlight Emperor, #1 in the world. His grave and stern face was like that of a deity. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, making him seem arrogant and disdainful. The golden robe fluttered, and the hair under the crown also fluttered in the wind. The world became quiet, and it was extremely oppressive. Xianyuan's sovereign and Zhou Xuanji both narrowed their eyes, as if they were facing a great enemy. They didn't even need to think to guess who this person was. In this world, only that person could have such a bearing. Just by standing there without saying a word, he exuded an invincible aura. It seemed that no one was qualified to stand in front of him. Sunlight Emperor, didn't you claim to be invincible in the world? Why do you still need the 10,000-year princes? Xianyuan Tian coldly harumphed, and Zhou Xuanji looked at him in confusion. Why do I feel a little sarcastic? Aren't you emotionless? Sunlight Emperor ignored him, stared at Chunban Tian, and said, I'm a #1 in the world, undoubtedly the #1. Since I became the #1, I have never fallen from this position. Follow me, and I will take you as my disciple. I will take you on the road of invincibility. When this emperor ascends, you will be the #1 under the heavens. Domineering. No matter how rational Chun Bantian was, his heartbeat quickened. But he did not agree and continued to hide behind Zhou Xuanji, not daring to come out. He muttered in his heart, can Senior Zhou defeat him? The #1 in the world and #2 in the world seemed to be only one rank apart. But in reality, the difference was like heaven and earth. Just like the Northern Wilderness Genius ranking, the gap between Zhou Xuanji and the second place was so huge that it made people speechless. Don't even think about it. He's mine, Zhou Xuanji said. Zhou Xuanji said. He was eager to try it out. #1 in the world. He had wanted to challenge him for a long time. Sunlight Emperor turned to look at him and said, Zhou Xuanji, this emperor knows you. You have great potential, but the 10,000-year prince's identity is special, so it's best if you don't get involved with karma. Since ancient times, there have been many geniuses, but not many people remember them because most of them died. His tone was calm, and there was no threat or enmity in it. Zhou Xuanji was indifferent because he had heard such words too many times. Many people pretended to have good intentions, but in reality, they were trying to suppress him. However, he did not feel any disgust hearing these words from Sunlight Emperor. After all, after Sunlight Emperor's cultivation reached great accomplishment, he had shocked the world and become the #1 in the world. It was a pity that Zhou Xuanji was not Sunlight Emperor. The world was unpredictable. Who could put down everything and focus on cultivation? Today, I will definitely take away the 10,000-year prince. None of you can stop me. Xianyuan Zhou could not help but say. Sunlight Emperor ignoring him was the greatest condescension towards him. Sunlight Emperor still did not look at him, and instead looked at Chun Bantian as he said, Are you willing? As long as you are willing, this emperor will take you back. No matter how many people come, they will not be able to stop us. Chun Bantian thought about it and asked, If I'm not willing, will you not force me? Sunlight Emperor gave a trace of a smile and did not say anything. Xianyuan Zhou could not take it anymore and stepped out, his aura exploding out. Heaven, please bestow me with divine power. Heaven, please bestow me with glory. Heaven, please bestow me with faith, he loudly cried out, and his voice sounded throughout Great Qin's royal capital, shaking people's hearts. 3 pillars of light broke through the sea of clouds and landed on his body. A terrifying might caused the palace to tremble. Chun Bantian looked at him in shock. What kind of power was this? Sunlight Emperor smirked but still did not say anything. He looked at Xianyuan Zhou, waiting for him to act. Zhou Xuanji slightly frowned. Back when they had fought, Xianyuan Zhou had not used heaven's power right from the start. It could be seen how important Sunlight Emperor was in Xianyuan Zhou's heart. Xianyuan Zhou did not waste any words and directly rushed at Sunlight Emperor. There was a loud bang. The two of them collided, giving off a brilliant light that covered their bodies. Zhou Xuanji sensed danger and quickly flew away with Chen Bantian. The palace walls shattered, and a terrifying shockwave wreaked havoc within the palace, destroying everything. The Emperor of Great Chun, Chief Monk Xuanhe, and a group of Great Chen's experts all flew up into the sky, looking incredibly shocked. What a terrifying aura! Two figures leapt up from the powerful light and rushed into the sky. They turned into two rays of rainbow light and madly clashed in the air. They were so fast that even great realization cultivators could not see them with their eyes. The powerful aura caused the royal capital to tremble, and the surrounding mountains also trembled, causing countless rocks to fall. Chief Monk Xuanhe suddenly saw Zhou Xuanji and Chen Bantian beside him, and he immediately became furious. "Ba, Zhou Xuanji, what are you doing?" Chief Monk Xuanhe loudly cried out. After speaking, he flew towards Zhou Xuanji. A golden Buddha rose up from behind him, looking benevolent and holy. It quickly grew and became 3,000 meters tall in the blink of an eye, proudly standing above Great Chen's royal capital. This scene immediately attracted the attention of the entire city. What's going on? A powerful enemy is attacking Great Chen? Zhou Xuanji? The Sword Emperor is here? No. Isn't the relationship between Great Chun and the Sword Emperor quite good? It's not just the Sword Emperor. The expert fighting above is most likely not a nameless person either. It's over. Should we run? The cultivators and commoners in the city began to discuss. Half of the royal palace had been flattened, and countless people had died. If the battle spread to the royal capital, it would be a disaster for Great Chun. Come, wonderful book house. Chapter 3:13. Zhou Xuanji, this prince of Great Chun, concerns the fate of the human race. You cannot take him away, Chief Monk Xuanhe said in a low voice as he looked at Zhou Xuanji. With the 3,000-meter tall golden Buddha behind him, his confidence was greatly boosted. Even if his opponent was the world's second, he would still dare to fight him. It just so happened that he had bumped into them today. He was going to avenge his humiliation. Chen Bantian trembled as he looked at the golden Buddha and asked in a low voice, "Should we run?" Facing such a mighty Buddha, he was intimidated. "What are you afraid of?" Zhou Xuanji laughed with disdain. He was very respectful toward Chief Monk Xuanhe at first. However, this fellow's hatred for Xian Xianghua was too great, and it went against the way of Buddhism. The emperor did not speak, but he was worried for Zhou Xuanji in his heart. It seemed like the rumors were true. Xuanhe Divine Monk's Buddhist art had improved again, and his strength was no longer the same as before. "Xuanhe Divine Monk, if I insist on taking him away, what will you do?" Zhou Xuanji asked as he smiled. This old fellow was a bit arrogant. He actually dared to challenge the second in the world. "Have you forgotten? You were once powerless in front of Xian Xianghua, who was ranked 5th in the world." Xuanhe Divine Monk snorted coldly and said, "If that's the case, then I can only use my strength to keep him here." After speaking, the golden Buddha behind him stretched out its hand and slapped toward Zhou Xuanji. He did not move quickly. Evidently, he wanted to give Zhou Xuanji a chance to give up. "I have such golden Buddha statues too." Zhou Xuanji took out heavenly retribution martial punishment, and following this, a golden Buddha appeared behind him. Zhou Xuanji's body quickly grew until it was 3,000 meters tall, and thousands of arms grew from his back. 5 years had passed, and his spiritual power had increased tremendously. Coupled with the fact that he was using the heavenly punishment martial punishment, the height of the 1,000-hand sword Buddha was no less than the golden Buddha of the Xuanhe Divine Monk. His 1,000 hands spread out, each holding a giant sword. This made his 1,000-hand sword Buddha look even more majestic to the onlookers. Chief Monk Xuanhe's eyes widened. Chen Bantian was shocked. The entire imperial city was in an uproar. Zhou Xuanji also cultivated Buddhism. Zhou Xuanji fused into the 1,000-hand sword Buddha's body, and the 1,000-hand sword Buddha opened its eyes. 2 terrifying rays of light shot out, illuminating the heavens and the earth. "This is the Emperor's way, 1,000-hand sword Buddha, and it is the unique skill of the Emperor's Sword Court. When the Emperor's Sword Court is established, anyone who wishes to learn it can come to the Emperor's Sword Court. Of course, not everyone can learn this unique skill. Zhou Xuanji's voice resounded across the heavens and earth, extremely majestic. It was a good opportunity to advertise. Chun Banshan's face was filled with admiration, and the Emperor of Great Chun, as well as the other officials and generals, were all in awe. What a domineering technique! In comparison, the divine monk Xuanhe was at a disadvantage. Emperor's Way, Thousand Hands Sword Buddha? What mighty name! This is also a sword technique. Emperor's Sword Court. Sword Emperor really wants to create a sacred land. The sacred land of swords might change the power structure of the northern wilderness region. Is this really a height that mortals can reach? All sorts of cries sounded out in the city, and everyone's attention fell on Zhou Xuanji and Chief Monk Xuanhe. Zhou Xuanji absorbed Chun Bantian into the thousand-hand sword Buddha's body and came to his side. They could experience the thousand-hand sword Buddha's perspective together. The thousand-hand sword Buddha raised all of its giant swords and slashed at Chief Monk Xuanhe's golden Buddha. Dang! Dang! Clang! The gigantic swords slashed the golden Buddha's body, creating countless golden sparks. The scene was extremely spectacular. Xuanhe Divine Monk's expression changed drastically. With a thought, the golden Buddha raised its arms and created a layer of golden light shield, blocking all the attacks. However, the thousand-hand sword Buddha's attacks were extremely ferocious. Each wave was more powerful than the last, forcing the golden Buddha to retreat continuously. This brat is already so powerful. Chief Monk Xuanhe thought to himself in fear. The divine ability that he had just learned was suppressed by Zhou Xuanji before it could show its power. He was both angry and fearful. He was indeed not a match for Zhou Xuanji. It was not luck that this brat could climb to the second rank in the world. He suddenly understood why Xian Xianghua was willing to marry Zhou Xuanji. That old demon's eyes were as sharp as ever. Boom! Chief Monk Xuanhe's golden Buddha was shattered by the thousand-hand sword Buddha. It was incredibly domineering, which made everyone's blood boil. Countless cries sounded out in the royal capital. They were all shouting the Sword Emperor's name. Chief Monk Xuanhe coughed up a mouthful of blood, and his face turned pale. I'm taking Great Chin's crown prince away. I will teach him cultivation and let him lead Great Chin to prosperity in the future. Zhou Xuanji's voice came from the thousand-hand sword Buddha, sounding solemn and holy. After that, the thousand-hand sword Buddha disappeared, and a sword light flew toward the horizon. Carrying Chun Bantian, he flew away swiftly on the snakeskin sword. He was already impressive enough for severely injuring Chief Monk Xuanhe. No one thought that he was running away. He was just too lazy to cause more trouble. However, his words excited Great Chin's people. Zhou Xuanji's teaching ability was already renowned across the world. Even the Hegemon sword sect's exquisite sword mind was willing to be his sword slave. One could imagine how powerful he was. In the entire Great Chun, no one could compete with Lin Chang'e. Great Chin's people began to look forward to it. At the same time, the battle between Xianyuan Zhou and Yang Di continued. The two flew extremely high up, far away from the ground. At first glance, it looked like two suns colliding with each other in the sky. One could vaguely hear the loud explosions. Who are they? The Emperor asked with a frown. No one answered him. Chief Monk Xuanhe looked up, and a trace of shock flashed in his eyes. He had seen Yang Di before, but he had never seen Xianyuan Zhou. Could that person be the Sword Saint? In the current world, other than the Sword Saint, who else could fight with Yang Di? On the other side, Zhou Xuanji flew at full speed, ignoring the battle between Yang Di and Xianyuan Zhou. Along the way, Chun Bantian was extremely excited. Senior Zhou, you are so awesome. The top monk in the northern wilderness region is so weak before you. Emperor's Way, thousand-hand sword Buddha? If I join Emperor's Sword Court, can I learn it? Is that a sword technique or a divine ability? Zhou Xuanji was frustrated and reprimanded. Shut up. You're like a girl. If you want to learn it, You have to contribute to Emperor Sword Court. It's the ultimate technique of the court, after all. Chen Bantian immediately shut up, but the excitement on his face did not fade away. Contribute? Simple. When he becomes the Emperor of Great Shun, he will throw in money and resources. Who can contribute more than him? The more he thought about it, the more excited he became, as though he had already obtained the Emperor's Wei Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha. Time passed quickly. A day later, the two stopped by a lake in a forest. He was too fast, and Chen Bantian could not take it. Senior Zhou, who do you think will win, Yang Di or Tian? Chen Bantian asked as he sat on the grass and internalized qi to rest. Zhou Xuanji rolled his eyes at him and said, "None of your business. Ask me after you enter the Northern Wilderness Top 100. Northern Wilderness Top 100. The will to fight burned in Chen Bantian's eyes. After he knew that he was the 10,000-year prince, his ambition grew. He was not willing to be the emperor of the empire. He wanted to do bigger things. Swoosh! A silhouette leaped out from the forest suddenly. Zhou Xuanji instinctively took out heavenly retribution martial punishment and was about to slash. "It's me." Dao Seeker's voice came. He quickly came up to Zhou Xuanji and wiped the sweat off his forehead. Zhou Xuanji squinted his eyes. "How come it's him? How'd he come here? Could it be that bronze dagger? Come. Wonderful book house." Chapter 314. Zhou Xuanji's gaze turned hostile at the thought that there might be something wrong with the bronze dagger. Dao Seeker saw his wariness and explained, "That dagger is the method of communication between us. Naturally, I can sense your existence through it. However, you don't have to think too much. Even without it, I can still deduce your location. In terms of the Tao of divination, your grandmaster is far inferior to me." He spoke very calmly. If Dao Old Man was here, what would he think? Chen Bantian looked at Xiao Dao curiously. Who was this person? It also seemed to be very impressive. Zhou Xuanji did not reply and stored heavenly retribution martial punishment into the supreme storage. Dao Seeker looked at Chen Bantian and nodded. He is indeed a 10,000-year prince. At the same time, he has the royal bloodline of the Yellow Dragon. Among the previous 10,000-year princes, his talent is considered outstanding. If he is nurtured well, he has a chance of becoming a great emperor in the future. Becoming a martial emperor. Chen Bantian's eyes widened as the blood in his body began to boil. He knew very well what becoming a great emperor represented. It represented the pinnacle of the world. It represented ascending to become an immortal. "Do you know about the Heaven and Earth epic?" Zhou Xuanji asked with a smile. Having heard him, Dao Seeker looked at him in astonishment. "How did you know about the world epic?" Dao Seeker asked with a frown. His words made Zhou Xuanji smile, look even more dangerous. Sure enough, this old fellow was hiding a lot of things from him. He began to hesitate, wondering if he should cut off his connection with Dao Seeker. However, thinking about it carefully, Xiao Dao was attached to him, and the two of them were actually in a cooperative relationship. Each had their own needs, and there was no need for them to meet each other honestly. Zhou Xuanji said, "Don't you know divination? Do the math." Dao Seeker shook his head and said, "I can predict everyone and everything in the world, but you are the only one I can't predict. This is also the reason why I helped you." Chen Bantian was completely bewildered, but he didn't dare to open his mouth and could only listen obediently. Some people say that there's a mastermind behind everything that happens today. What do you think? Zhou Xuanji continued to ask. With Dao Seeker around, he was not afraid of Sunlight Emperor or Xinyuan Zhou catching up. If he caught up, it would be a good opportunity to test this fellow's strength. Xiao Dao was not moved. He replied calmly, "In the face of the world's influence, all attempts are futile, even if it's done by immortals." How pretentious! Zhou Xuanji shook his head and laughed before asking, "What business do you have with me? Could it be that you want the 10,000-year prince?" Hearing that, Chen Bantian's body trembled. He quickly got up and hid behind Zhou Xuanji, afraid that Dao Seeker would suddenly attack. "I'm just here to make sure you're safe. After all, you're weaker than Sunlight Emperor and Xinyuan Zhou." Dao Seeker's answer made Zhou Xuanji a little displeased. They were looking down on him too much. Let's go. I'll escort you back to Skyfall. Along the way, I can create illusions so that they won't be able to follow us. Daoseeker urged. Zhou Xuanji and Zhou Xuanji did not rest and continued on their way, but at a slower pace. News of what happened in Great Shun started to spread. News of Zhou Xuanji easily defeating Chief Monk Xuanhe spread the fastest. Subsequently, the matter about Yang Di, Tian, and the 10,000-year prince was also exposed. As for who spread the news, no one knew. For a time, the winds and clouds of the world changed again. At the edge of the human territory, Zhou Xuanji and the others suddenly stopped. They were standing on a white cloud, and below them was an uneven mountain range. What happened? Chun Bantian asked anxiously, thinking that another strong enemy had come to attack. Zhou Xuanji did not reply, but followed his gaze. He saw a group of people touring the mountains. There were 32 women and one man. This man was Great Emperor Heartless, Bai Hao Yisin. The women around him were all as beautiful as flowers. They surrounded him and laughed happily. Just their voices could move any man's heart. Bai Hao Yisin, who was among them, was already lost. He kissed this woman in that one moment, and he felt so happy. Seeing this, Chun Bantian became jealous and cursed. This brat is so free and easy. I want to be like him in the future. I want to bring my harem of 3,000 women out to play often. Daoseeker divined with his fingers and said, So it's Great Emperor Heartless. Only he can be so unrestrained. There were many dangers between the two races. Who would dare to bring so many women to play in the wilderness alone? Zhou Xuanji immediately flew down and landed in front of Bai Hao Yisin. His sudden arrival caused the women to scream out in fear. Bai Hao Yisin looked over and was given a big fright as well. Why is it you again? He cursed. Are you a ghost? You're haunting me like a ghost. 5 years had passed, and he had finally recovered some of his cultivation, only to run into Zhou Xuanji again. He instinctively looked around. Could it be that Xinyuan Zhou had also come? Zhou Xuanji harumphed and said, Why can't you die? Bai Hao Yisin felt quite depressed and said grumpily, If it wasn't for me, you would already be a dead man. Aren't you going to thank this emperor? The 32 women hid behind him and looked at Zhou Xuanji curiously. From his appearance, Zhou Xuanji was not inferior to Bai Hao Yisin. They did not know who he was for him to be so handsome. Daoseeker and Chun Bantian landed behind Zhou Xuanji. Bai Hao Yisin glanced at Daoseeker and harumphed as he said, What? You're asking for help. Do you think this emperor is afraid of you? Come here. After saying this, he raised his right hand, looking as if he was prepared to fight. I'm very curious. Who made you reincarnate? Choosing to reincarnate during the world epic. It definitely isn't a coincidence, right? Zhou Xuanji asked. He did not feel any enmity towards Bai Hao Yisin. After all, they had no conflicts of interest, nor did they have any enmity. Bai Hao Yisin's eyes widened, and he cried out in shock. World epic? Now. He tightly frowned, and his expression began to fluctuate. Damn, no wonder that old thing was so attentive to me. He's trying to trick me. Damn, I can't go back now. If I die during the world epic, this emperor will be too miserable. No, this emperor must hurry. He mumbled to himself, revealing a lot of information. Zhou Xuanji asked, Who is this old thing you're talking about? Bai Hao Yisin harumphed and said, I'm not telling you. If I tell you, you might be scared to death. It's best if you don't know. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became, and he gnashed his teeth. Zhou Xuanji harumphed and left. The three of them quickly disappeared over the horizon. The beauties crowded around him and asked who Zhou Xuanji was. Bai Hao Yisin was quite frustrated, but he did not vent his frustrations on the beauties. He continued to smile gently and said, He's just a kid with decent talent. He did not want to talk about Zhou Xuanji, as he was afraid that these women would change their minds. By now, he had already understood Zhou Xuanji's fame in the current era. He was the man that all the young female cultivators in the world dreamed of. A while later, Yang Di descended suddenly. He looked at Bai Hao Yisin and asked, Have you seen them? He waved his right hand, and two figures appeared beside him. They were Zhou Xuanji and Chun Bantian. When the beauties saw Yang Di, their eyes sparkled. Such a domineering man. Bai Hao Yisan felt quite angry when he saw Zhou Xuanji. "I've never seen them before," he said unpleasantly. As expected, nothing good would come out of meeting that brat. "Looks like you've seen them before. If you don't tell me, don't blame this emperor for being impolite," Yang Di said calmly. Having heard this, Bai Hao Yisan was quite delighted. "You dare to call yourself this emperor in front of this emperor? Are you tired of living?" Fourth update. Seeking recommendation votes and monthly votes. I've just announced the strength ranking of the characters in the Legendary Swords storyline. Those who are interested can take a look. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 315. On the white cloud, Zhou Xuanji and the others quickly flew in. Dao Seeker suddenly said, "Sunlight Emperor has found Great Emperor Heartless, and the two of them are fighting." Zhou Xuanji had a strange look on his face. Could the current Great Emperor Heartless be a match for Yang Di? If he had been at his peak, he would have been able to defeat Sunlight Emperor. Unfortunately, he was a reincarnated body and had died once before. He lost, Dao Seeker said again. Zhou Xuanji was stunned. So fast. He knew that Bai Hao Yisan would lose, but he had not expected it to happen so quickly. Chun Bantian blinked and asked, "Was the Great Emperor from 90,000 years ago so weak?" Sunlight Emperor hadn't reached the Dao realm yet, but he had already defeated him in seconds? Zhou Xuanji glanced at him and said, "Great Emperor Heartless is now a reincarnated body. Previously, he perished together with the heavens and revived again. However, dealing with you should be easy." Chun Bantian didn't feel humiliated at all. Instead, he clicked his tongue in wonder. The Great Emperor could revive infinitely and couldn't be killed? When he thought of what Dao Seeker had said, that he had the potential to become a great emperor, he felt a burning passion in his heart that not even a heavy downpour could extinguish. Zhou Xuanji looked at Dao Seeker and asked, "What stage is Yang Di at now? How is he compared to the Sword Saint?" Dao Seeker replied calmly, "If it's in his peak state, it's hard to predict his chances of winning. However, Shi Shinzong has just been revived, and his cultivation is still recovering. Naturally, he won't be a match for Sunlight Emperor. He's the current number one. Don't look down on him. His talent is not inferior to Shi Shinzong's." Zhou Xuanji nodded. Everyone greatly admired Yang Di, and this made him feel even more expectant. He was looking forward to the day when he would surpass Yang Di and become the top cultivator in the world. The three of them did not stop and continued forward. 4 days later, Dao Seeker spoke again. Xinyuan Zhou went to find Great Emperor Heartless again. Zhou Xuanji felt speechless. It seemed that he had harmed Bai Hao Yisan. He asked, "How is the battle going?" Right now, Bai Hao Yisan was not a match for Xinyuan Zhou. As soon as he saw Xinyuan Zhou, he immediately self-detonated, taking Xinyuan Zhou down with him. Only a remnant soul was left. Dao Seeker muttered. Having heard him, Zhou Xuanji was even more speechless. Chun Bantian widened his eyes. Wasn't this guy a little too tough? Zhou Xuanji inwardly sighed. Fortunately, he had not forced Bai Hao Yisan into a corner. At least Xinyuan Zhou wouldn't be able to cause trouble for him for a few more years. But there was also a disadvantage. He would have to face Sunlight Emperor alone. "Don't worry. I will inform an old friend of mine and let him restrain Sunlight Emperor." Dao Seeker saw Zhou Xuanji's worry and said softly, "Old friend." Zhou Xuanji frowned and immediately thought of that mysterious man in the woven rush raincoat. In his impression, only that person could be mentioned in the same breath as Dao Seeker. The tone of the man in the woven rush raincoat and Dao Seeker was extremely similar. They had the appearance of extraordinary experts, and the only one who could compare to them was Feng Qiu. However, Feng Qiu was still a bit lacking. The Tianxia Map's trap had ended up benefiting Zhou Xuanji. He didn't pursue the matter, knowing that it would be useless. Dao Seeker would definitely not answer. Another 5 days passed. Zhou Xuanji and the others hurried to the foot of Skyfall. Looking at the majestic Skyfall, Chun Bantian was stunned. What a mighty mountain peak! It was indeed one of the tallest mountains in the northern wilderness region. Within the clouds, one could vaguely see Fenyu Dragon King's body. It was a spectacular sight. All right, let's call it a day. I still have other matters to attend to. Dao Seeker left after saying this, and Zhou Xuanji curled his lip. This guy claimed that he did not participate in worldly conflicts, so what was he busy with? Chun Bantian came to Zhou Xuanji's side and said softly, Senior Zhou, something's not right with this guy. He might be a threat. Although Dao Seeker's attitude toward him was very good, and he seemed to admire Dao Seeker, he did not think much of it in his heart. He had a premonition. Dao Seeker would be his greatest enemy. Zhou Xuanji rolled his eyes at him and said, What do you know? Chun Bantian felt quite depressed. I'm not a child anymore. I'm the crown prince of Great Chun. I still have my judgment. After this, the two of them flew up to Skyfall. Zhou Xuanji gathered his trusted aides and introduced them to Chun Bantian. It was the first time that Meng Tianlang, Lin Chang'e, and Ning Zifeng had seen Chun Bantian, and they were all very curious about this 10,000-year prince. Different from last time, Chun Bantian appeared very arrogant. He first greeted Jiang Shui, Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Songjian, and the others with a restrained manner. He then looked at Meng Tianlang and the others arrogantly and smiled. I, the 10,000-year prince, have the royal bloodline of the Yellow Dragon. Please take care of me in the future. Everyone was speechless. Zhou Xuanji could not help but facepalm and said, Don't harm his life. Chun Bantian was stunned. He turned around and looked at Zhou Xuanji in astonishment. Ning Zifeng kicked his buttocks and whipped him with a scabbard. Lin Chang'e and Meng Tianlang came up as well. The three of them knew their limits and did not hurt Chun Bantian's bones. They only wanted to teach him a lesson. A while later, Zhou Xuanji instructed Ning Zifeng, take care of him in the future. Although Ning Zifeng was arrogant, he had already integrated into Skyfall. Zhou Xuanji believed that he would not do anything rash. And so, Chun Bantian joined Skyfall. Zhou Xuanji taught him the ancestral dragon sword straight away. This guy was a yellow dragon after all, and he was most suited to cultivate the ancestral dragon sword. With the two 10,000-year princes on the mountain, Zhou Xuanji began to look forward to the future. Time passed quickly. 10 years passed quickly. Zhou Xuanji resumed his diligent cultivation. He broke through 2 levels consecutively and reached Great Realization Level 4. In 10 years, he obtained 16 legendary swords. The highest was Heavenly Soul, and the lowest was Silver. There was only one Heavenly Soul legendary sword, and it was called the Great Heavenly Mystic Jade Sword. Sword name, Great Heavenly Mystic Jade Sword Level. Heavenly Soul description. Created from the deep-sea mystic jade, it was born at the beginning of the world. It is not restrained by the might of the heavens and possesses great power. The other 15 swords were the Ancient Crane Divine Sword, Ink Jade Sword, Thousand Kill Sword, Phoenix Cry Sword, Suppressing River Sword, Greedy Butterfly Sword, Cold Dust Sword, Evil Blood Sword, Wise Spring Sword, for Fire Sword, Earth Fiend Sword, Dragon Seal Scroll, Cold Fiend Sword, Great Treasure Sword, and Flaming Void Sword. Zhou Xuanji's legendary swords had also broken through the 100 mark, reaching 104. In these 10 years, he had also drawn equipment, sword techniques, and cultivation techniques from the Supreme Legendary Sword System. Unfortunately, none of this was of much help to him. He had already mastered the 100 sword style. Although he had yet to master the 3rd level of the World Buddha art, Overlord of the World, he was already on the right track. His Celestial Devil Rebirth art had already reached the 2nd level, and he had 2 chances to be reborn. His strength had improved by leaps and bounds, far surpassing what it was before. He wasn't sure exactly how strong it was. He even felt that he already had the power to fight against Yang Di. He had endured for 10 years. He had never left the mountain. He had been cultivating hard, waiting to become the number 1 in the world in the future. Not only was he becoming more powerful, but so were the others. Jiang Shui, Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Songjian, Chun Bantian, and Han Xinhua had all reached astral projection. The others had their own breakthroughs too. The second-generation disciples had all reached Soul Fountain. The weakest of the third-generation disciples had reached enlightening. After all, these were all geniuses handpicked by Zhou Xuanji and the others. Most of them had already started cultivating before joining Skyfall. This day, Zhou Xuanji, who was cultivating by the cliff, opened his eyes suddenly. The sword spirit's voice resounded in his mind. Analyze that the sword owner has reached 53 years old. Gotcha started. Ding. Congratulations, the sword owner obtained intimidating spirit. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 316. Ding. Congratulations, the sword owner has obtained intimidating spirit. God Ghost Howl, primordial chaos, sword shadow. Intimidating spirit legendary sword. Zhou Xuanji frowned in delight, but when he remembered that he was already 53 years old, he felt a little sad. Although he had taken the everlasting youth pill and stayed young forever, he still had the memory of his previous life. These days, when he heard the sword spirit's reminder, he felt an indescribable melancholy. 3 lines of words appeared before his eyes. Sword name, God Ghost Howl grade. Overlord soul description, a sword that has absorbed the souls of countless immortals and gods. It is a ghost sword. Once activated, tens of thousands of ghosts will howl, intimidating the enemy. A black sword appeared in his hand. The sword was long and thin. It was 1.5 meters long and only 3 fingers wide. The tip of the sword was much wider and had 2 curved hooks. At first glance, it looked like a ship's anchor. It was ferocious and domineering. The sword guard looked like 2 fangs. Zhou Xuanji fell in love with the god Ghost Howl at first sight. A very murderous sword. What sword is this? He seems very powerful. Jiang Shui moved behind him and asked curiously. Even though she was 57 years old, she was still as beautiful as a young girl. Not only had she eaten the youth-halting pill, but her heart was also young. She had spent all these years in Skyfall and had not experienced the vicissitudes of life. Zhou Xuanji caressed the sword and said with a smile, "This is the god Ghost Howl, a very powerful sword." Jiang Shui smiled faintly and did not pursue the origin of the ghost god Howl. She smiled and said, "Chen Bantian and Meng Tianlang are fighting again. Do you want to go take a look?" 10 years had passed. Chen Bantian could already use the ancestral dragon sword. Although its power was far from perfection, he already had the strength to fight against Meng Tianlang. Not only was he the 10,000-year prince, but he also had the royal bloodline of the yellow dragon. His talent was slightly superior to Meng Tianlang's, and the two of them often fought like Lin Chang'e and Ning Zifeng. However, they knew when to stop and never killed. Let them be. You seem to be in a good mood. Did you make a breakthrough? Zhou Xuanji stored the god Ghost Howl into the supreme storage. He took Jiang Shui's hand and pulled her into his embrace. Jiang Shui cupped his face and kissed it. She giggled and said, "Yes. Grandmaster said that I already have 10% of his power. I divined for Sister Lianxin once and predicted her future. Guess what I predicted?" Zhou Xuanji asked curiously, "What did you divine?" He was happy to see Jiang Shui so happy. This last would always be his little son. "I have divined that she has a pair of ghost eyes, which should be her ghost emperor divine eyes. Her aura is very strong, looking down at the mountains and rivers, very similar to Xianxianghua. It seems that Sister Lianxin will be very strong in the future. Maybe she will be ranked in the top 100 of the Northern Wilderness." Jiang Shui said with her beautiful eyes wide open. When this matter was brought up, her face was filled with amazement. The Huang Lianxin she saw was like a completely different person from the current Huang Lianxin. Ghost Emperor Divine Eye? Zhou Xuanji thought about it. Daoya Old Man had a very high evaluation of these eyes. But up until now, the Ghost Emperor Divine Eye did not display any other formidable aspects apart from seeing through things. "Did you find anything else?" Zhou Xuanji pinched Jiang Shui's cheek and asked with a smile. Jiang Shui smiled and said, "I've also divined Little Black. This guy will become a dragon king in the future and rule over countless dragons. That scene is really spectacular. As for the others, I can't calculate them. After all, it's too tiring. I need to rest. The little black snake will rule the dragon clan? Zhou Xuanji's expression changed slightly. Now was the world epic, and the next race would replace the human race. Could be the dragon race? With Little Black's appearance, how could he become a dragon king? He was only a shameless snake. No matter what, he remembered this in his heart. He chatted with Jiang Shui for a while more, and she left to check on the female disciples' cultivation. 3 years ago, the number of third-generation disciples exceeded 1,000. Not long ago, Xiao Jinghong and Zhao Songjian brought another batch of second-generation disciples out and would only return after 1 or 2 years. Zhou Xuanji began to inherit the primordial chaos sword shadow. He was very interested in the word primordial chaos. It seemed that this sword technique was not simple. A while later, the inheritance ended. He opened his eyes and was astonished. Such a marvelous sword technique. It was not weaker than the Emperor's Wei thousand-hand sword Buddha and the Ancestor Dragon Sword. It might even be more powerful. Primordial Chaos Sword Shadow could transform into countless sword shadows. When gathered together, it was as domineering as the primordial mountains and rivers. This sword technique already had a divine ability, and it consumed a lot of energy. However much spirit energy one had, one could transform into as many sword shadows. There were 3,000 moves in total. It looked like a lot, but the differences between the moves were subtle. The main thing was to connect the 3,000 moves together. He took out the Dragon Seal Scroll and began practicing. The Dragon Seal Scroll did not look like a sword's name, but it was actually a dazzling legendary sword embedded with rubies and emeralds. When it was swung, it could create wind and gather spirit. Only he and Zhou Xiaoqi were on the mountaintop. The others were cultivating in different corners of Skyfall. Daoya Old Man had gone out for business and had not returned for 7 days. Only until late at night did Zhou Xuanji reach small accomplishment in the Primordial Chaos Sword Shadow. After a night, he practiced the Primordial Chaos Sword Shadow 300 times and reached great accomplishment. It was only until noon that he finally reached the Swordwell state. He immediately activated the Primordial Chaos Sword Shadow. He swung his sword with his right hand. It was so fast that it left behind afterimages. His spirit energy exploded, and numerous sword shadows appeared above his head. In less than a breath's time, thousands of sword shadows appeared under the starry sky. They were densely packed and looked exactly like the Dragon Seal Scroll. The number of sword shadows increased continuously. Soon, there were more than 1 million of them. These sword shadows did not maintain the same height. At one glance, they looked like undulating mountains, vast and domineering, like the primordial mountains and rivers in the legends. Zhou Xiaoqi, who was napping, looked up and was so shocked that all his scales stood up. "What? What's this?" He cried out in surprise and looked at Zhou Xuanji instinctively. His back was facing him, and his back view was so domineering. Millions of sword shadows were above his head, looking down at the starry sky. Zhou Xiaoqi was almost mesmerized by it. "Not bad," Zhou Xuanji replied to the Primordial Chaos Sword Shadow and smiled satisfactorily. He could create more sword shadows, but there was no need for it. This was his ultimate trump card. The Primordial Chaos Sword Shadow was not only powerful, but it was also under his control. He could attack wherever he pointed. He suddenly had a bold idea. If he could merge world internalization with the Primordial Chaos Sword Shadow, wouldn't he become more powerful as he fought? This idea was genius. He admired himself. However, it was not an easy task to fuse the two techniques together. He stored his sword and was prepared to internalize qi. "Wow, you've learned another powerful skill." Xian Xianghua's charming laughter came suddenly. Zhou Xuanji turned around and saw that the old demonic woman appeared behind him out of nowhere. She wrapped her arms around his neck and pulled him into her embrace. Facing her, Zhou Xuanji did not defend or resist. So, he was pulled into her embrace without any warning. He felt something soft on his face, and he quickly dodged. With the 8-step sword lunge, he came up behind Xian Xianghua. So fast, Xian Xianghua squinted her beautiful eyes, which were filled with extraordinary splendor. As expected, this brat had become more powerful after a dozen years. She turned around to look at Zhou Xuanji and spoke first. I have a great serendipity. Come with me, my little husband. Come. WonderfulBookhouse.com. Chapter 317. What's serendipity? Zhou Xuanji asked casually as he reminisced about the wondrous moment just now. Xian Xianghua came up to him and leaned forward. Her eyes curved into 2 crescent moons as she smiled and said, a serendipity that can help you increase your cultivation quickly. I have already recovered with it, and my cultivation is even more powerful than when I was at my peak. Zhou Xuanji heard her and asked curiously, what's serendipity? Can you bring others along? Having heard that, Xian Xianghua stretched out her hand and pinched his face. You brat, she snorted. You always think of Jiang Shui when there's something good. Aren't you afraid that I will be angry? As she spoke, she used a little force, which made Zhou Xuanji feel a little pain. It seemed that this old demonic woman's cultivation had indeed improved. He shrugged and said, she can help us if she becomes more powerful. Moreover, this good thing was discovered by you, Sec Lord Xian. You have already enjoyed it. If Jiang Shui discovered it, I will surely think of you. He said it casually, but it was easy to convince others. Xian Xianghua withdrew her hand, rolled her eyes at him, and pouted coquettishly, glib tongue. Only you and I can go because it's too dangerous. There's a demon that surpasses the 9th rank guarding that place. But you can bring back some good treasures for them to use. Zhou Xuanji heard her and became even more interested. He asked what serendipity it was. Xian Xianghua remained mysterious and refused to say. He did not force her because he believed that Xian Xianghua would not harm him. He immediately gathered everyone together and told them that he was going out. Jiang Shui did not stop him, but reminded him, be careful and don't force things. Although she was jealous of Xian Xianghua occasionally, she knew that Xian Xianghua would not harm Zhou Xuanji. If he was in danger, Xian Xianghua would probably save him with her life. Before Xian Xianghua left Skyfall, she often taught her cultivation and even taught her the celestial devil rebirth technique. However, she did not cultivate it, because the celestial devil rebirth technique required too much spirit energy. If she cultivated it, it would delay her own cultivation. She wanted to cultivate it after her cultivation was higher. After all, she did not have a Tianxia map and could not cultivate it as quickly as Zhou Xuanji. After that, Zhou Xuanji and Xian Xianghua left. Chen Bantian looked at Meng Tianlang and cursed. Brat, let's fight again today. Meng Tianlang felt helpless, while the little black snake and Chongming demon monarch started to jeer. The others shook their heads and laughed as they continued to cultivate. Within the demonic clouds, Xian Xianghua sized up Zhou Xuanji curiously. Zhou Xuanji, who was cultivating, could not take it anymore. He opened his eyes and asked, why are you staring at me? Xian Xianghua tilted her head and smiled. I haven't seen you for more than 10 years. I miss you. She pretended to act coquettishly, which gave Zhou Xuanji goosebumps. This wasn't Dragon's proud flower style. Since there's no one here, why don't we have some fun and dual cultivate? Xian Xianghua gently pulled open her collar, revealing her snow-white skin, which made Zhou Xuanji's eyelids twitch. The next second, she suddenly tightened her collar and laughed. Ha ha ha, look at you. You look like a playboy. Zhou Xuanji was speechless. Are you crazy? Why did he feel that this old witch had changed and liked to tease him more than before? Okay, back to the main topic. I feel that you have become much more powerful. You should be as powerful as a second tribulation scattered immortal, right? Xian Xianghua sat beside Zhou Xuanji and asked with a smile. Second tribulation scattered immortal? Zhou Xuanji did not care. 15 years ago, I could already fight with Xianyuan Zhou, who was a third tribulation scattered immortal. What about now? Of course, He was not sure what level Xianyuan Zhou was among the third tribulation scattered immortals. Although his cultivation and battle techniques had become much more powerful, he was not a great tribulation scattered immortal after all. His spirit energy was not as powerful as a great tribulation scattered immortal. This was a huge shortcoming. If he was becoming more powerful, Yang Di and Xianyuan Zhou must be there too. Tell me, where are we going? Zhou Xuanji asked. For Xian Xianghua to call it a great serendipity, it must be something extraordinary. Xian Xianghua did not hide anymore and said, I found a palace in the eastern sea region of the northern wilderness region. It's 10,000 meters underwater, and there's an underground spirit spring with colorful celestial fruits. They have been growing for tens of thousands of years and contain extremely dense spiritual qi. It's a pity that there's a great tribulation demon guarding it. He's extremely powerful, and even I can't deal with him alone. Previously, I only picked up a few colorful celestial fruits near the palace, and I could already increase my cultivation. What do you think will happen if I get the colorful line spirit tree? A natural treasure that had been growing for tens of thousands of years. Zhou Xuanji's heart skipped a beat. He patted Xian Xianghua's shoulder and said with a smile, Bitch, just you wait. With me here, I will definitely destroy that demon. Xian Xianghua's eyes turned dangerous and asked coldly, Brat, say that again. She reached out to grab his chin and pulled him into her embrace. Her hands turned into demonic claws as she ravaged his face and groped his body. Zhou Xuanji's blood boiled in anger. He immediately cried out, Stop! Stop! If you act recklessly again, be careful of the enemy's sneak attack. Having heard him, Xian Xianghua gave up and snorted coldly. Both of them had many enemies. An enemy might really appear out of nowhere. To change the topic, Zhou Xuanji mentioned Great Emperor Heartless, Dao Seeker, Old Mother Wan Yi, and the others. He also talked about the world epic. Xian Xianghua's eyes turned solemn. She did not reply, but fell in a deep thought. Zhou Xuanji waited quietly. This old demonic woman had lived for tens of thousands of years after all. Her knowledge must have far surpassed his. Seems like we have to ascend before the Great Tribulation, Xian Xianghua said as she spread out her hands. She seemed very relaxed. Her cultivation could ascend a long time ago. It was just that Tanhua sect had declined, and she was reluctant to do so. But Zhou Xuanji had already matured, and the day of his ascension was not far away. Zhou Xuanji almost fainted in laughter. This is your conclusion? I thought you could provide some crucial clues. He said unpleasantly. Xian Xianghua rolled her eyes at him. Her eyes seemed to be saying, You think I know everything? 10,000 Swords Divine Mountain. Shi Shinzong stood on the peak of a mountain and looked down. Among the mountains, many sword cultivators were sparring with each other. It was very lively. Mountain Lord Shi Haiming suddenly appeared behind Shi Shinzong. He knelt down respectfully and cupped his fist, saying, Old Ancestor, I have found out the location of Sun Hill and Skyfall. When are you going to move? More than a decade had passed. Shi Shinzong had finally recovered his peak cultivation. He no longer feared anyone in the world. Within 10,000 Swords Divine Mountain, everyone was looking forward to the Sword Saint dominating the world. He said calmly, I'm not in a hurry. I want to know where Tian and Great Emperor Heartless are. Compared to dealing with juniors, he wanted to challenge seniors more. As for Tian, he had defeated a Tian before. It was a pity that after he fell, that Tian rose up and became the Hegemon Sword Emperor's formidable opponent. Tian is in the Heavenly Palace. He built the Heavenly Palace at a height of 30,000 meters. Great Emperor Heartless roamed the world and is very difficult to find. Chapter 3:18. Very well. I will go to the Heavenly Palace first. Shi Shinzong said softly. After that, he turned into a stream of sword light and disappeared into the horizon. The birth of the Sword Saint would surely shock the world. Shi Haiming looked up with a fervent expression and mumbled to himself, 10,000 Swords Divine Mountain is finally going to rise. 10,000 Swords Divine Mountain was once the sanctum of the Sword's Way in the northern wilderness region. After 10,000 years of depression, it was time to rise again. He turned to look at the disciples below with a gratified smile. These children would be the future of 10,000 Swords Divine Mountain. They traveled at full speed for 10 days. Zhou Xuanji and Xian Xianghua finally came to the seaside at the east of the northern wilderness region. The two stood on the beach, and the seawater flowed over their boots. Zhou Xuanji wore a luxurious blue robe that was not wet by the seawater. He looked toward the horizon and asked, "Where is that palace?" Xian Xianghua replied, "We will reach it after walking for about 150 miles. But we have to wait for one more person." He found the palace. Zhou Xuanji was curious. Who would go to the deep sea for no reason? In the northern wilderness region, both humans and demons were deeply fearful of the deep sea. About half an hour later, a ball of demonic chi flew over from the horizon and landed before the two of them. The demonic chi dissipated, and an evil-looking man appeared. He had long white hair and wore a black robe. His face was handsome, but his skin was loose and wrinkled. An evil aura emanated from his brows, and his curled lips gave off a cruel and ruthless vibe. Great tribulation scattered immortal. Zhou Xuanji squinted his eyes. There are not many great tribulation scattered immortals in the world. Other than Xian Xianghua, there was no one else in the Tanhua sect. Could it be? Nephew Zhou, long time no see. The black-robed man grinned. His smile was chilling. Zhou Xuanji said calmly, "Diablo, you resurrected indeed. I did not expect you to have the cultivation of a first tribulation scattered immortal." This person was the ancient Diablo, the rival of the hegemon Sword Emperor. Diablo shook his head and said, "You should know how powerful the celestial devil rebirth technique is. If I had not died for so long, 10 years would have been enough for me to recover to second tribulation scattered immortal." Zhou Xuanji was curious suddenly. How powerful was this guy at his peak? That palace is called the Violet Demon Palace. It has existed for a long time. If I hadn't been seriously injured by Sky and thrown into the deep sea, I wouldn't have discovered its existence. Diablo said faintly. He, who was heavily injured, was naturally no match for the demon guarding the Violet Demon Palace. Otherwise, he could have used the 5-colored immortal fruit to boost his cultivation and even defeat the hegemon Sword Emperor. Let's go. With the three of us working together, we can definitely defeat that demon. The Diablo looked up at Zhou Xuanji and chuckled. His expression was like a father-in-law looking at his son-in-law. The more he looked, the more satisfied he was. Under his lead, Zhou Xuanji and Xian Xianghua quickly flew towards the horizon. After a while, the three of them plunged into the sea and used their spiritual power to resist the seawater. Their cultivations were very high, so they were not afraid of the pressure of the seawater. When they had dived for 100 meters, they could no longer see the light. Fortunately, they could rely on their divine senses to continue diving. A distance of 10,000 meters was not far for them. Soon, Zhou Xuanji saw a ball of faint light below. When he got closer, he realized that it was the Violet Demon Palace. All sorts of gems were embedded on the surface of the palace, which glowed brightly and illuminated the surrounding underwater space. The Violet Demon Palace was nearly 100 meters tall and was divided into 2 levels. It was majestic and imposing, and there were 2 demon statues in front of the gate. They had green faces and fangs, and they had 3 heads and 6 arms. That demon's cultivation might have surpassed Third Tribulation scattered immortals. Even if it didn't, it should have reached the pinnacle of Third Tribulation scattered immortals. We must be careful, Diablo reminded, afraid that Zhou Xuanji would underestimate the enemy. Xian Xianghua said, "It's not that serious. He can't leave the Violet Demon Palace. If he can't win, he can retreat." Zhou Xuanji heard her, and his eyes were filled with battle lust. This demon was a good opportunity to test his power. He took out Heavenly Retribution Martial Punishment and God Ghost Howl straight away, and said, "I'll go first. If I can't defeat it, then you guys can attack." After that, he quickly came to the gate of the Violet Demon Palace. The Diablo looked at Xian Xianghua and asked with interest, "How powerful is this brat?" He sighed in amazement in his heart. She lived up to her name as his daughter. She had sharp eyes. He had heard that before Zhou Xuanji entered the Northern Wilderness Top 100, Xian Xianghua had already taken a fancy to this brat. She even offered him the position of vice sect lord. "I'm not sure, but he's more powerful than you anyway." Facing the Diablo, Xian Xianghua appeared cold. The Diablo was not angry, but looked toward Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji kicked open the gate violently. His body turned golden, and heavenly lightning coiled around him. A purple Tai Chi diagram appeared on his forehead. Golden invincible form, world reincarnation. In such a state, he was not afraid of sneak attacks. He walked into the Violet Demon Palace. There was a faint green light that illuminated a path that led deep into the palace. The two sides were pitch black, as though countless malicious ghosts were hiding inside. Ordinary people did not dare to enter at all. Amazingly, there was no seawater in the palace. It was filled with dense, spiritual qi. The ancient god sword appeared above Zhou Xuanji's head. The souls of 8 powerhouses appeared like 8 black shadows. Emperor Hanlin, Saber Monarch Donghai, Demon Lord Ren, Emperor Songhai, Ghost Emperor Zhangtan, Emperor Zhao, Dao Lord Xiantian, and Lu Wuji. Emperor Zhao, Dao Lord Xiantian, and Lu Wuji were the 3 souls that had awakened in the past 10 years. Emperor Hanlin had also awakened, but no matter how Zhou Xuanji called out to him, he did not reply, as though he had no consciousness. Swoosh! An ear-piercing sound came. Next, Zhou Xuanji felt that he was hit by something, and he took a few steps back involuntarily. Roar! A deep roar came from the darkness, as though it came from the underworld. Zhou Xuanji used heavenly lights straight away. The darkness was dispelled, and he saw the demon's face. He was 9 meters tall and had a humanoid body. He wore a tattered brass armor, and his hair was as white as withered grass. His face was pale, and his fangs were extremely long like daggers. His eyes had no pupils but were bloodshot and scara. His body was hunched, and his claws were like that of a tiger or lion. His nails were glowing coldly. He looked at Zhou Xuanji furiously. His eyes were filled with extreme rage and hatred. Violet Demon Palace is a forbidden ground. Humans are not allowed to trespass. Kill without mercy. The white-haired demon roared and charged toward Zhou Xuanji again. He was so fast that Zhou Xuanji's eyes could not keep up with him, but he still swung his sword to the side with his instincts. Boom! Zhou Xuanji was sent flying away. His clothes were torn at the chest, and there were 3 claw marks on his golden chest. World reincarnation could reflect spirit energy and demonic energy, but this demon did not use demonic energy and still managed to injure him. In the cultivation world, even physical cultivators would channel their spirit energy into their fists and kicks to increase their destructive power. But this demon did the opposite. However, it was not Zhou Xuanji's first time encountering such an enemy. He activated the Emperor's Way 1,000-hand sword Buddha straight away. The 30-meter-tall, 1,000-hand sword Buddha swung all of its giant swords at the white-haired demon. The white-haired demon was extremely fast, and the 1,000-hand sword Buddha could not hit him at all. He leaped up and split into hundreds of duplicates, charging toward Zhou Xuanji from different directions. Kinsha map. The human emperor must die. He roared furiously, which shocked Zhou Xuanji. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 319. Dang, dang, clang. Hundreds of white-haired fiendish demons surrounded and attacked the 1,000-hand sword Buddha, catching it off guard. Zhou Xuanji held both swords in his hands, but he could not block the white-haired demon's storm-like attacks. If this continued, he would be torn apart by the white-haired demon even if he had the invincible Vajra body. The heavenly thunder on his body had no effect on this fellow at all. This was the first time he had encountered a monster with such a terrifying body. Looks like he hasn't lost his mind yet, Zhou Xuanji thought to himself. He immediately activated Heavenly Retribution Martial Punishment and God Ghost Howl. Woo woo woo. Countless cries rang out, filled with resentment, mournfulness, and terror. Zhou Xuanji's body was enveloped by two streams of qi, half of which was blood qi and the other half was black qi. Adding on the heavenly lightning, he looked like an ancient demon god, and his aura exploded. The power of martial punishment, the power of gods and ghosts. In his eyes, the white-haired demon's speed suddenly slowed down. He immediately displayed his dual sword intense, the sky-dominating divine sword in his left hand and the cold wave sound wave in his right. The white-haired demon instantly fell into a disadvantageous position. He started to dodge, but in the end, Zhou Xuanji used universal attraction to pull him in front of him. Zhou Xuanji furiously slashed out with his two swords, slashing into his shoulders. No matter how strong his body was, it was still unable to block the sharpness of the intimidating spirit divine sword. The blade sank into his shoulder bone. Roar! The white-haired demon roared hoarsely. Arms grew out of his back and struck Zhou Xuanji away. Then two more heads popped out from both sides of his neck. His skin turned green, which reminded Zhou Xuanji of the two stone statues in front of the gate. So it was him. Outside the palace, Xian Xianghua and the evil king watched the battle through their divine senses. Both of them were shocked. They knew that Zhou Xuanji was much more powerful than before, but they did not expect him to be this powerful. Not even a first tribulation loose immortal can withstand the power of that fiendish demon. Even ordinary second tribulation loose immortals wouldn't dare to fight it head-on. The evil king swallowed his saliva and exclaimed, "Why is this kid's physical body so strong when he's only at the Mahayana realm?" But Xian Xianghua knew that Zhou Xuanji had the Tianxia map to nourish his body every day. Every month, he also used natural resources to refine his body. His body had already reached an extremely horrifying state. Although he was not as good as the white-haired demon, he still had his sword techniques. She suddenly felt that Zhou Xuanji was not far away from becoming number one in the world. There was no need to wait for 1,000 years, or even 100 years. She sighed faintly. Why did she feel that Zhou Xuanji's talent was growing? Those two swords of his are definitely not ordinary weapons. Could it be that he has inherited from the upper realm? Xian Xianghua nodded in response. She thought that Zhou Xuanji's legendary swords came from the sky-sundering Sword Emperor and the Hegemon Sword Emperor. Hegemon Jiu was an example. It was the Hegemon Sword Emperor's invincible divine weapon. At the same time, Zhou Xuanji fell into a fierce battle. The three heads of the white-haired fiendish demon actually possessed different mystiques. Originally, it was only his physical body that was strong. Now, there were two more mystiques. The eyes of the left head would shoot out two terrifying flames that could break through the defense of the invincible Vajra body. The right head continuously shot out green light arrows from its mouth. Even world reincarnation could not reflect them. It was truly strange. This demon's name is Demon Marshal Sanhai. He has guarded Purple Demon Palace for over 100,000 years and is one of the few that can resist the Tianxia map. An ancient voice sounded in Zhou Xuanji's ears. It was Emperor Hanlin. Sound transmission. What's his weakness? Zhou Xuanji asked as he dodged. Demon Marshal Sanhai's cultivation was powerful, and his body was ridiculously powerful. His speed was so fast that it was impossible to defend against him. What was worth mentioning was that Violet Demon Palace was too sturdy. Even when they were fighting in the palace, Violet Demon Palace did not tremble at all. No weakness, unless you reach Fifth Tribulation Scattered Immortal and suppress him with absolute power. Emperor Hanlin's words made Zhou Xuanji shudder. Fifth Tribulation Scattered Immortal? Even Yang Di might not reach Fifth Tribulation Scattered Immortal. Could it be that I can only retreat? Zhou Xuanji gritted his teeth and took out his glorious gold and heavenly soul legendary swords to defend against Demon Marshal Sanhai's attack. Find a Violet Demon Monarch's heart and fuse it into your body. Violet Demon Palace will recognize you as its owner, and Demon Marshal Sanhai will not harm you anymore. Emperor Hanlin continued to speak telepathically. Next, a memory entered his mind. It was the map of Violet Demon Palace. This guy came to Violet Demon Palace before? Without a word, Zhou Xuanji dashed toward the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. Why is this guy running inside? Let's go and help him, Diablo said with gritted teeth. He looked anxious. If Zhou Xuanji died, they would not be able to get the colorful celestial tree. Xian Xianghua stopped him and said, "Don't worry. If he can't win, he will run outside. Don't worry. He might already have a plan." There was a powerful restriction deep within Violet Demon Palace, which prevented their divine senses from penetrating. So, they had already tracked Zhou Xuanji's whereabouts. Diablo tried his best to calm his emotions. He wanted to see if Zhou Xuanji could defeat the demon. He heard Zhou Xuanji asking about Demon Marshal Sanhai's weakness. Who was this guy talking to? Could it be the soul in the Tianxia map? He fell into deep thought. Zhou Xuanji traveled swiftly through the corridors. From the outside, Violet Demon Palace did not look huge. But after going deeper, it looked like a city. There must be some kind of spatial restriction here. The legendary swords blocked Demon Marshal Sanhai, but they could only slow him down. They could not stop him. According to Emperor Hamlin's memory, Zhou Xuanji quickly came to a side palace and broke through the door. Billowing flames came at him, but he ignored them. After passing through the sea of flames, he finally saw the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. It was a heart that was as big as a watermelon. It levitated in a stream of silver radiance, and the meridians on its surface could be seen. Zhou Xuanji came up to the Violet Demon Monarch's heart and asked in his heart, "What should I do to it? What's the price?" He scanned it with his divine sense and sensed that there were no remnant souls, restrictions, or poison. He did not trust Emperor Hamlin completely, but he trusted his own senses. The World Buddha art allowed his senses to surpass cultivators at the same stage as him. He could even sense spirit energy, which was one of his trump cards. Place it on your chest, and the Violet Demon Monarch's heart will merge with your heart automatically. Don't worry, this is not the heart of some powerful cultivator, but a supreme treasure of creation. It was born from the fate of the world. Your physique can barely absorb it, and there will be no side effects. Emperor Hamlin's voice sounded in his ears, which made him hesitate. He remembered that the sword spirit said that all the sword souls in the supreme legendary sword system would not harm him. Even though they had their own thoughts, they were already absolutely loyal to the swordmaster. Since that was the case, then let's give it a shot. He placed the Violet Demon Monarch's heart on his chest. Instantly, a wave of violet radiance shone from the Violet Demon Monarch's heart and illuminated the entire palace. Ruhr, Demon Marshal Sanhai appeared at the door and leaped toward Zhou Xuanji with one step. He clawed at Zhou Xuanji. The Violet Demon Monarch's heart quickly entered Zhou Xuanji's chest. Instantly, Demon Marshal Sanhai stopped and was less than 2 meters away from him. Zhou Xuanji felt that his chest was about to explode. It was extremely hot. A wave of energy exploded from the Violet Demon Monarch's heart and wreaked havoc in his body, charging all his vital channels. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 320. Boom, boom, boom. Zhou Xuanji felt the spirit energy in his body continuously explode, and the unimaginable pain caused him to half kneel on the ground. His legendary swords also fell to the ground. He supported himself with his right hand, sweating profusely. His eyes were wide open and bloodshot. His heartbeat was like a war drum ringing in his ears. Everything around him was forgotten, and he fell into a trance. The purple Taiji symbol on his forehead became brighter and brighter, as if it was drawn by lines of fire. Violent Ling power came from the depths of Violet Demon Palace, causing all the halls to tremble. Demon supremacy, Sanhai's eyes shone with blood-red light as he turned around and left quickly. From the outside, the Violet Demon Palace did not seem to be shaking at all. Evil King couldn't sit still any longer. He said in a low voice, "If he doesn't go in now, his life will be in danger." Then, he rushed into the Violet Demon Palace. Xian Xianghua snorted coldly and followed closely behind. She could see through Diablo at a glance. This guy was afraid that Zhou Xuanji would monopolize the colorful celestial tree. As soon as the father and daughter entered the Violet Demon Palace, they were stopped by Demon Lord Sanhai, and a great battle broke out. At the same time, Zhou Xuanji was already surrounded by spiritual qi. He was in the whirlwind, but he was still half kneeling on the ground. His cultivation was rising steadily. Not far away, the souls of 8 powerful beings hovered above the ancient god sword. At this moment, they were actually communicating. Interesting. The owner of the Tianxia map actually obtained the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. This is unprecedented. Legend has it that if one obtains the Tianxia map, they can obtain the world and become the human sovereign. However, they obtained the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. Could it be that their fates do not conflict? You guys really didn't die. Why didn't you say anything before? TSK, Lu Wuji, I didn't expect you to fall as well. I grew up listening to your legends. Emperor Hanlin, the younger generation will surpass us in time, even going through the Violet Demon Palace. Unfortunately, he's still the same as us old fellows, only leaving behind a remnant soul, struggling at death's door. These powerhouses all knew each other. Of course, it was only one-sided because they came from different eras. Zhou Xuanji did not notice their conversation. He was enduring extreme pain. Not long after, his cultivation had broken through to Mahayana level 5. The violent power was like a torrent pouring into a well. Not only did it cause his physical body to feel tormented, but even his will was being tormented. But as time passed, he began to get used to the pain. If the extreme pain lasted for a long time, people would become numb to it. His consciousness became slightly clearer. He could feel the meridians in his body being torn apart. Even his golden core and nascent soul were shattered, but they did not collapse. Fortuitous encounter. This is a great opportunity. Zhou Xuanji was pleasantly surprised in his heart. It was as though he saw a ray of sunlight after being in darkness for a long time. The excitement was indescribable. He immediately activated the World Buddha art. The speed at which he took in qi suddenly increased, but the injuries in his body were decreasing. This speed and trajectory, could it be the legendary World Buddha art? Demon Lord Ryuan exclaimed in surprise, drawing the attention of the other 7 mighty figures. World Buddha art. The supreme beings fell silent. Dao Lord Xiantian asked in astonishment, "Is the World Buddha art very powerful?" No one answered him. They hadn't even heard of the World Buddha art, so they couldn't be bothered with him. Of course, it wasn't necessarily because this person was weak. There could be other reasons. Time continued to pass. Xian Xianghua and Evil King were unable to defeat Demon Lord Sanhai and were eventually forced out of Violet Demon Palace. Demon supremacy, Sanhai stood at the door like a guardian, glaring at the two of them. Evil King frowned anxiously. Why didn't this guy capture Zhou Xuanji? Could he already? He asked in astonishment. Although he said that, he had another thought in his heart. Xian Xianghua snorted. Maybe Xuanji has already found the colorful celestial tree. Evil King heard her and frowned even deeper. He was a little frustrated. Violet Demon Palace was a place that he discovered. How could he allow someone else to take it for himself? Even if that person was his son-in-law. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. Aren't you afraid that he will take it for himself? He asked with a deep voice. That was the colorful celestial tree. Even the great ancient emperors would be moved by it. So what if he takes it for himself? He's my future husband. Everything I have belongs to him, Xian Xianghua said with a smile, which almost made Evil King vomit blood. However, he did not lose his temper, but only gnashed his teeth. Xian Xianghua's eyes were filled with disdain and did not speak anymore. An hour later, Zhou Xuanji broke through to Great Realization Level 6. His pain had been reduced by half. He was exhilarated. So satisfying. Breaking through 2 stages consecutively was equivalent to 10 years of hard work. And it was not over yet. 2 hours later, he broke through to Great Realization Level 7. But the good times did not last long. The surrounding spiritual chi began to dissipate. The surging spirit energy in his body calmed down gradually. He could still hear his heartbeat, which grew louder and louder. It was like the heartbeat of the earth. It was heavy and powerful like a poem. Zhou Xuanji could move his limbs now. He sat down with his legs crossed and continued to channel his energy. He had just entered Violet Demon Palace and leveled up 3 times consecutively. This made him very excited. The pain he suffered previously was nothing to him now. He began to look forward to breaking through to great tribulation scattered immortal. At that time, he would be invincible in the world. The serendipity was not over yet. There was still the colorful celestial tree deep within Violet Demon Palace. Zhou Xuanji took a deep breath and focused on cultivation. Numerous purple lines appeared in his body like meridians, which made him look extremely evil. He did not pay attention to his appearance, but he could sense that his physical strength had reached an unprecedented level, which was far beyond what it was before. He even felt that his physical strength was not inferior to Demon Sovereign Sanhai's. Just this alone was enough to increase his power by leaps and bounds. Another half an hour passed. The Violet Demon Monarch's heart completely fused with him, and the violent spiritual chi in the surroundings stopped. He did not manage to break through to Great Realization Level 8, but he was not disappointed. He clenched his fist and felt a sense of power that could destroy everything. He could see that his heart had turned purple and was slightly bigger than before. The Violet Demon Monarch's heart is a supreme treasure that the demon race and demon race fought over. Now that you obtained it, this is an incredible serendipity. Congratulations. Emperor Hamlin's voice came from behind. The 8 souls levitated in a row and looked at him. He got up and looked back. May I ask if the Violet Demon Monarch's heart has any other uses other than strengthening one's physique? Zhou Xuanji asked curiously. He could sense that the Violet Demon Monarch's heart was extraordinary. Because of it, his sword master haki became many times stronger. Emperor Hamlin said ambiguously, "You need to comprehend it yourself." After that, he and the other 7 souls dispersed and entered the ancient god sword. Zhou Xuanji could not help but think. He had a feeling that the Violet Demon Monarch's heart was not simple. He planned to keep this a secret. Of course, he would still tell Xian Xianghua, but he must keep it a secret from Diablo. He looked around the palace and did not find any other treasures, so he walked toward the gate of Violet Demon Palace. At the same time, Diablo was like an ant on a hot pan. His heart was burning with anxiety. It had been so long, but Zhou Xuanji had not come out yet. Don't tell me that brat swallowed all the colorful celestial fruits. Come, wonderful book house. Chapter 3:21. You're really not anxious? Diablo could not hold back his restlessness and asked Xian Xianghua. Xian Xianghua's eyes were indifferent and ignored him, which made him furious. Following her gaze, Demon Sovereign Sanhai was still guarding the gate. He stared at them furiously and did not move. Strange. Why is this guy guarding the gate? He was not like this before. Could he be protecting Zhou Xuanji? Xian Xianghua thought in astonishment. She was sure that Zhou Xuanji had some serendipity, but it should not be the colorful celestial tree. That treasure was connected to the spirit fountain after all. If it was uprooted, there would be a huge commotion. Of course, there was another possibility. That was Zhou Xuanji was eating the colorful celestial fruits one after another. But with her understanding of Zhou Xuanji, he would not leave her to eat alone. Just when the two were thinking, Zhou Xuanji appeared behind Demon Sovereign Sanhai. The two opened their eyes wide. Demon Sovereign Sanhai turned around and knelt before Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji was shocked in his heart. He felt that he had some kind of connection with Demon Sovereign Sanhai. It was as though he was facing his own servant. He somehow felt that Demon Sovereign Sanhai would obey him. Move aside. Don't hurt them, he instructed immediately. Demon Supremacy Sanhai immediately retreated into the darkness and disappeared. He smiled satisfactorily and turned to Xian Xianghua and Diablo. Come in, he said with a smile. It seemed that Demon Sovereign Sanhai had some special relationship with the violet demon monarch heart. He could not understand this, so he could only ask Emperor Hamlin in the future. Or maybe there was an answer deep within the violet demon palace. Xian Xianghua and Diablo came up to him and stepped into the palace carefully. "Nephew Zhou, what's going on?" Diablo asked gently, but his heart was filled with anger. This guy must have some serendipity. He could make such a powerful demon, sovereign Sanhai, submit to him. He was really jealous. If he could do the same, with demon sovereign Sanhai around, he would surely be unrivaled in the world. Zhou Xuanji had already prepared an excuse. He shrugged his shoulder and said with a smile, "Back then, he was chasing after me. I hid in a side palace, but strangely, the demon did not dare to come in. I found a bead in the side palace, which looked like an eyeball. Before I could react, the bead entered my body, and then this happened." Using the eyeball to represent the violet demon monarch's heart, he did not believe that the evil king would be able to guess correctly. Evil king came to a realization, and his heart bled. If he had known earlier, he would have given it a try back then. This was a great opportunity not inferior to the five-colored celestial spiritual tree. The more he thought about it, the more depressed he felt. However, facing Zhou Xuanji, he still had to maintain a smile of admiration. Xian Xianghua hooked her arms around Zhou Xuanji's neck and said with a charming smile, "My little husband is so awesome." She ignored the ancient Diablo beside her and began to tease Zhou Xuanji as though no one else was around. The three of them chatted for a while and walked deeper into the Violet Demon Palace. From the beginning to the end, Demon Lord Sanhai did not jump out of the darkness. "When we leave, see if you can bring that demon out with you. It's a powerful force." She sighed in her heart. This brat's luck was truly heaven-defying. He felt that no matter where he went, there would be great fortuitous opportunities. Zhou Xuanji nodded, but in his heart, he was not confident either. It would be bad if Demon Lord Sanhai suddenly went berserk and attacked the people around him. The three of them moved ahead quickly in search of the five-colored celestial tree. The Violet Demon Palace was bigger than they imagined. They traveled for a long time, but they still could not find the five-colored celestial tree. But they were not discouraged and continued their search patiently. They dispelled all the restrictive spell formations along the way. Above the sea of clouds, the scorching sun shone brightly. Mountain peaks emerged like reefs in the sea. The man in the woven rush raincoat sat on a mountain peak. He, who was cultivating, suddenly raised his head slightly. Why is there a change in the situation of the world? He mumbled to himself with a tinge of fear. Normally, the situation of the world would not change. Once there was a change, it would mean the arrival of an existence that surpassed this world. He began divining with his fingers, but he could not divine anything. At this moment, a silhouette appeared behind him. It was Dao Seeker. "The situation of the world has changed. Do you feel it?" Dao Seeker asked. Having heard him, the man in the woven rush raincoat got up slowly and turned to look at him. The two of them looked at each other in silence. A while later, the man in the woven rush raincoat said faintly, "Dao Seeker, our plan might not change anything. We need more power." Although his tone was cold, there was a tinge of sorrow in it. "Not really. What I'm asking for has nothing to do with the human race." "Why? You suddenly don't believe in Yangdi?" Dao Seeker asked expressionlessly. There seemed to be a tinge of mockery in his eyes. The man in the woven rush raincoat did not reply, but turned around with his back facing Dao Seeker. "After Shi Shinzong came out, I suddenly felt that he had a greater chance. Although Yang Di was powerful, his heart was as pure as jade. It would be difficult for him to become an overlord. Sword Saint. Back then, Shi Shinzong was even more outstanding than Yang Di. There were many heroes in that era, and Yang Di might not have Shi Shinzong's status in that era. No matter what, I believe in Zhou Xuanji. Take care." Dao Seeker left after saying this. Since the man in the woven rush raincoat could not see through the situation of the world, he did not bother to say more. After Dao Seeker left, the man in the woven rush raincoat did not sit down, but continued to think. In the long history of the human race, who else could be compared to Shi Shenzong, other than the great emperors, Yang Zhou with the purple chi from the east, the legendary Lu Wuji. After searching for 2 hours, the three finally found the colorful celestial tree. This tree was actually under Violet Demon Palace. If not for Xian Xianghua discovering a secret door, they would not have found it. Because Violet Demon Palace had a mysterious background and was overseen by Demon Sovereign Sanhai, they could only search for it and did not dare to destroy it. This was a vast underground space where spiritual chi formed a mist. There was a small lake in front of them that was bubbling with countless bubbles. A colorful tree stood at the center of the lake. Colorful, celestial tree. This tree was 15 meters tall and bore many fruits. Each fruit had 5 colors: red, purple, yellow, green, and blue. Most of them were the size of an adult's fist. Diablo's expression turned greedy and walked up quickly. Although Xian Xianghua's eyes were burning with passion, she still walked at a steady pace. Zhou Xuanji was thinking whether he could move this tree to Skyfall. Diablo plucked a colorful celestial fruit and began chewing. Shortly after, he plucked another 5 and sat down to cultivate. Xian Xianghua turned around and shouted, "Hurry up, or this old thing will finish all of them." Having heard that, Diablo's mouth twitched and veins bulged on his forehead. But for some reason, he did not do anything to Xian Xianghua. He was like a different person from the cruel and domineering legend. Zhou Xuanji walked to the small lake. He waved his right hand and took 100 colorful celestial fruits and placed them in the supreme storage. Diablo could not help but open his eyes and cried out, "Nephew Zhou, isn't this very rude of you?" Zhou Xuanji glanced at him and said, "If not for me, could you have come in?" There were at least 400 to 500 fruits on the colorful celestial tree. He was already giving face by taking 100 first. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 322. Zhou Xuanji did not have a good impression of the ancient Diablo, even though he treated him well. In his opinion, this old fellow definitely had something on Xian Xianghua, or perhaps he was already Xian Xianghua's puppet, which was why he had such an attitude. Facing Zhou Xuanji's question, the Diablo fell silent. Xian Xianghua smiled. With a wave of her right hand, 5 colored immortal spiritual fruits flew in front of her. She meditated on the ground and said, "Let's hurry. When we came here before, I found traces of other people. I'm sure we are not the only ones who discovered the existence of the Violet Demon Palace." Others? Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes. Anyone who could dive 10,000 meters into the sea was definitely not an ordinary person. Could they be Sunlight Emperor or Jiang Wudi's men? Or it could be a force from overseas. Without thinking too much, he grabbed a few more 5-colored immortal fruits and began cultivating. The underground space fell into silence. The 3 of them cultivated on their own, causing spiritual energy to surge. The colorful celestial fruit contained more spirit chi than Zhou Xuanji had expected. It took him 6 hours to refine a 5-colored immortal fruit. Xian Xianghua and the ancient Diablo were not any slower than him. After all, their cultivations far surpassed Zhou Xuanji's. Days passed by. 8 days later, outside the Violet Demon Palace, a group of cultivators surrounded it. The leader was a bald man wearing heavy armor. He held a tiger-striped broadsword in his hand. His face was ferocious and full of ferocity. It really is the Violet Demon Palace. Legend has it that there is a demon venerable Sanhai in there, and his cultivation has reached the 4th tribulation scattered immortal realm. You are not allowed to enter without permission, the bald man said in a deep voice. He looked at the Violet Demon Palace, and greed flashed in his eyes. The legend of the Violet Demon Palace. He had been looking forward to it for a long time. Today he had finally seen it. An elder in a robe cupped his hands and said, "Your Majesty, before we come up with a foolproof plan, let's not go in. After all, this place is close to the northern wilderness region. If we make too much noise, we will definitely attract trouble." The bald man nodded and laughed. The northern wilderness region should have fallen. It's such a treasure land, but no one found it. How sad. Ha ha. I shall fulfill my wish today. His name was Duan Yogu, and he came from Sea Region. He came to this ocean through the void. Based on his understanding of the Northern Wilderness region, the current Northern Wilderness region was not that strong. There weren't even 50 Great Tribulation loose immortals. In the current world, only Yang Di could be considered as a big shot. The other cultivators also revealed looks of disdain. However, they also understood that the people and demons of the Northern Wilderness had always been in awe of the ocean. After all, there were countless savage beasts hidden in the ocean. Even they had to be cautious. After that, Duan Yogu barged into the Purple Demon Palace alone. The moment he stepped through the door, he was found by Demon Lord San Hai, and a great battle broke out. In less than the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, he returned in low spirits. He wiped off the bloodstains on his face and glared at Demon Lord San Hai, who was standing in front of the gate. He scolded, "This demon's body is ridiculously strong. We can't force our way in." His subordinates were secretly shocked. They knew that Duan Yogu was a Dharma and body double cultivator, and his cultivation focused on the physical body. His strength was unparalleled in all the sea regions, but they did not expect him to be defeated so quickly. The other side, beneath the Violet Demon Palace, Zhou Xuanji and the others could feel the ground trembling slightly above them. Xian Xianghua opened her eyes and said, "You came so quickly." She looked at Zhou Xuanji. He had already broken through to Mahayana level 8 and absorbed 25 colored immortal fruits. Diablo 832, and his cultivation improved as well. Zhou Xuanji closed his eyes and muttered, "If so, let's split the fruits. I can take less, but this tree belongs to me." Having heard that, Diablo opened his eyes and looked furious. The value of the 5-colored celestial tree far exceeded that of the 5-colored celestial fruits. Why should it belong to you? Okay. Xian Xianghua agreed without hesitation, which almost made Diablo vomit blood. Adulterer and adulterer, villains in cahoots. He could only curse in his heart, but did not dare to say it out. He could not win against Zhou Xuanji and Xian Xianghua in an argument, nor could he win against them in a fight. This was the only way. After that, Diablo and Xian Xianghua each took 120 fruits, while the rest belonged to Zhou Xuanji. Together with the 100 that he took at the beginning, he had the most 5-colored celestial fruits. But Xian Xianghua was biased, so Diablo could not do anything about it. Zhou Xuanji flew to the surface of a lake and uprooted the 5-colored celestial tree single-handedly. The spirit fountain gushed out, shaking the entire underground space. The spring water splashed on his body, but was blocked by his spirit energy. To prevent the 5-colored celestial tree from withering quickly, he immediately stored it in the supreme storage. This scene made Diablo's heart bleed. So painful. Zhou Xuanji returned to Xian Xianghua's side and said, "You guys escaped secretly. I want to cultivate here for a while longer." His gaze was locked onto the spiritual spring, reluctant to part with it. Xian Xianghua shook her head and said, "You must leave quickly. If this matter is exposed, all powerful cultivators will target you since you have the Tianxiao map and the 5-colored celestial tree." Zhou Xuanji pondered for a while and agreed to Xian Xianghua's suggestion. The three left quickly. Outside Violet Demon Palace, a group of cultivators were getting into formation. Duan Yogu stared at Demon Sovereign San Hai and said coldly, "I don't believe that I can't destroy you. Form the Hades god-slaying formation with all your might. Summon the most powerful hell demon." His tone was impassioned as he roused the emotions of his subordinates. Everyone channeled their spirit energy and gave it their all. At this moment, a ball of demonic chi flew out from Violet Demon Palace toward the surface of the sea with extreme speed. Duan Yogu's pupils contracted. He immediately chased after it with his saber. A stream of sword chi shot out from the demonic chi. It was extremely fast, and Duan Yogu raised his saber to block it instinctively. With a loud boom, he was struck down. When he stabilized himself, the demonic chi was already gone. He frowned and looked down at his hands. The webbing between his thumb and forefinger was torn, and blood seeped out. It was excruciating. Such a domineering sword chi. A sword cultivator with such power in the northern wilderness region. Sword Saint Shi Shinzong. News of his resurrection spread across the northern wilderness region. There were many spies from overseas in the northern wilderness region, so Duan Yogu knew about it too. The overseas humans all originated from the northern wilderness region. The legends of the Sword Saint were passed down too. Thinking about how powerful the Sword Saint was, Duan Yogu took a deep breath and did not chase after him. On the other side, Zhou Xuanji and the other two had already flown out of the sea and toward the mainland at full speed. Hades' God-slaying formation. TSK. The overseas cultivators are impressive. They can even pass down such an ancient formation. Diablo said in amazement. Xian Xianghua could not help but look at Zhou Xuanji strangely, because Zhou Xuanji knew this sword formation too. Zhou Xuanji looked calm, as though he did not see her gaze. He was thinking about Duan Yogu. This fellow was very strong. He was estimated to have the strength of a second tribulation scattered immortal. Who knew what rank he was in the overseas region? Of course, Duan Yogu was no match for him. He hadn't used his full strength in the previous attack. This trip to the Violet Demon Palace had saved him dozens of years of effort. At the same time, his physical body had transformed and he had obtained the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. It was definitely a great opportunity. If he challenged Yang Di now, could he become the #1 in the world? However, he did not know that the northern wilderness region was currently in a huge uproar. Sword Saint Shi Shinzong defeated Sky, and Sky fell from the sky, smashing into an imperial city and dying on the spot. The news spread and shocked the world. The legendary Sword Saint was about to show his power. Chapter 323. When Zhou Xuanji heard about Shi Shinzong defeating Xianyuan Zhou, he had already returned to Skyfall. Along the way, they did not stop, so they did not ask for information. When they got close to Skyfall, Xian Xianghua and the Diablo went their separate ways. Zhou Xuanji was very curious about what they were plotting, but that was the Tanhua sect's business, so he did not ask too much. When he returned to the peak of Skyfall, everyone crowded around him. The first to speak was Lin Chang'e, and he told them about Shi Shinzong's recent accomplishments. Ever since Tian had been defeated, Shi Shinzong had gone around challenging experts. His opponents were all in the top 10 of the Desolate North's top 100, and even Zhang Wudi had been defeated by him. TSK, heaven died again, Zhou Xuanji said in amazement. Ever since Xianyuan Zhou had made his debut, this fellow had repeatedly died. However, with the protection of heavenly law, this fellow would most likely come back to life. Lin Chang'e said in a low voice, "There's one more thing. Shi Shinzong has challenged you to a battle in 1 year's time. The location is Sword Emperor Canyon, where the Hegemon Sword Emperor ascended. This matter has already been announced to the world by the Songhai Ziggurat, and everyone in the world knows about it. Jiang Shui, Chongming Demon Monarch, Beixiao Wangjian, Huang Lianxin, and the rest all looked terrible. They knew that Zhou Xuanji had fought with the heavens before and had almost been killed by them. On the other hand, Shi Shinzong was able to destroy heaven by himself. Perhaps only Sunlight Emperor could compare to him in terms of power. Zhou Xuanji did not panic and said, "Spread the word that I will meet you in a year." Hearing this, the crowd widened their eyes and tried to persuade him. After all, Shi Shinzong was a legend, and Zhou Xuanji could ignore him. At most, he would be laughed at by others, but no one would doubt his strength. Daoya Old Man asked curiously, "What realm are you in now?" Everyone became silent. Could it be that Zhou Xuanji had become more powerful again? That's right. Didn't he go with Xian Xianghua to look for fortuitous opportunities? It seemed that he had obtained the opportunity. Great realization level 8, Zhou Xuanji said as he smiled, causing everyone's eyes to widen. Without waiting for the crowd to speak, he told them about the Violet Demon Palace and ignored the violet demon monarch's heart. He had a feeling that the origin of the violet demon monarch's heart was not inferior to the Tianxia map. Jiang Shui said excitedly. In other words, we can also improve our cultivation by leaps and bounds. She was very smart. Her words shifted everyone's attention to the colorful celestial fruit, so they did not think about how Zhou Xuanji stopped demon sovereign Sanhai from attacking. Zhou Xuanji nodded and took out the colorful celestial fruits. He gave one each to Jiang Shui, Han Shinbua, Douya Old Man, Huang Lianxin, Beixiao Wangjian, Chou Ming Demon Monarch, the Little Black Snake, Meng Tianlang, Zhou Xiaoqi, Ning Zifeng, and Lin Chang'e. Other than that, he also planned to give one each to the 4 mountain guarding kings, the 3-eyed drought rodent, Finyu Dragon King, a big and small heir. As for the 2nd and 3rd generation disciples, he would not give them to them. After all, the 5-colored celestial fruit was rare. In the future, it could be used as a treasure of the Emperor's sword court to attract disciples to cultivate diligently. Daoya Old Man shook his head and said, I don't want it. After all, my cultivation has reached a bottleneck. Zhou Xuanji did not force them and allowed them to cultivate. He, Daoya Old Man, and Jiang Shui walked to the side. The 5-colored celestial tree is of great importance. Where do you think we should plant it? Zhou Xuanji asked. He wanted to plant it on the top of the mountain, but after some thought, it would be too ostentatious. Daoya Old Man stroked his long beard and said, Why don't we open up a cave beneath our feet and draw on the spirit spring in the mountain to nourish the 5-colored celestial tree with spiritual qi? He sighed in amazement in his heart. Why was this brat so lucky? He could get whatever serendipity he wanted. Could this brat be the legendary child of luck? The 3 of them acted immediately. Lin Chang'e left Skyfall and was prepared to spread the news that Zhou Xuanji accepted the challenge. Since they were going to fight, they should make it big. So what if he was a legend in the sword's way? Within 10 days, the news that Zhou Xuanji accepted the challenge spread across the world. The Sword Emperor, indeed. He has guts. The most talented person in the sword's way today versus the most talented person in history? Sure, Shenzong is so domineering. Can Zhou Xuanji stand up to him? It's difficult indeed. Even Tian was slain by him. The previous Tian gave the hegemon Sword Emperor and Diablo a headache. Sword Emperor Canyon, I must go. Haha, no matter who wins, I must go. This is a great opportunity. The 8 sanctums and 7 empires were all discussing this. If Zhou Xuanji defeated Shi Shenzong, he would surpass the legend and become a great emperor for sure. If Shi Shenzong defeated Zhou Xuanji, his next target would be Yang Di, and he would become the top cultivator in the world. Most people thought that Shi Shenzong would win. After all, even Tian was killed by him. However, Zhou Xuanji was already a legend in the world. All kinds of achievements were spread across the northern wilderness region, and he had won over countless believers. Soon, a war of words broke out. Great Shang, Chaoge Royal City. Yang Xindi gathered all the officials in the court. They were discussing the battle at Sword Emperor Canyon. They wanted to support Zhou Xuanji. If Zhou Xuanji's life was in danger, they could stand up for him. This emperor feels that only the Sword Emperor deserves to be the top cultivator in the world. If he dies, it will be a misfortune for the human race. He has done so many good deeds over the past few decades, and he has never asked for anything in return. This emperor cannot let him fight alone, Yang Xindi said with a deep voice. He was only 1 word away from Yang Di, but their power was worlds apart. However, his boldness was not inferior to Yang Di's. Zhou Xuanji had the Tianxia map, and he was the target of everyone in the northern wilderness region. He dared to step forward, and this earned the admiration of the officials. However, they also had their own concerns. Yang Zhongtian stepped out and said, I'm afraid that even if all of our experts come, it will be difficult to stop Shi Shenzong from killing him. Although this sentence was a slap in the face, it was the truth. Yang Xindi nodded and did not fly into a rage out of humiliation. Instead, he said, Let's ask Great Zhou and Great Chun for help. This is also an opportunity. Tell them that if Emperor's Sword Court really becomes a holy land in the future, it can also protect us. However, if Sword Saint leads 10,000 Swords Divine Mountain to become a holy land, he will not protect us. With Shi Shinzong's leadership, the 10,000 Swords Divine Mountain would definitely become a holy land. The civil and military officials nodded and began to discuss how to persuade the two dynasties. Meanwhile, Great Zhou and Great Chun were also discussing this matter. The two dynasties all had the same idea, wanting to unite the three dynasties' power. Within the vast desert, the black-clothed Shi Shinzong slowly walked through the sandstorm. He had a treasured sword at his waist. His face was expressionless, and his eyes were sharp as he stared straight ahead. Suddenly, a burst of laughter came from the front. A few hundred meters away, there was a wooden hut. Dozens of women were singing and dancing. Bai Hao Yisin was lying on a wooden bed, and beautiful women were lying beside him. All of them were charming, which made him feel extremely happy. Suddenly, he saw Shi Shinzong's silhouette and frowned. His heart trembled violently. Such a sharp aura. He had a bad premonition. "What's the matter, sir?" he asked loudly. Ever since he encountered Zhou Xuanji, his luck had been bad. It was as though he had run into evil spirits. He had self-destructed a few times and was about to collapse. "Great Emperor Heartless, let's see who's stronger today." Shi Shinzong's voice came, and his tone was cold. "Bai Hao Yisin. Calm. Wonderful Book House." Chapter 324. Bai Hao Yisin stood up from the pile of beauties and sighed. His body blurred, and he appeared 30 meters away from Shi Shinzong. "Must we fight? Can this emperor admit defeat?" His expression was unsightly as he said faintly. Right now, he only had the power of a first tribulation scattered celestial. How could he be a match for Shi Shinzong? Even though he didn't know who Shi Shinzong was, he knew that this person was very powerful. He was too lazy to ask. He just wanted to let it go. "I've always wanted to experience the power of a great sovereign. Even if you've reincarnated, you should still have the power of a great sovereign. Let's fight in the sky, lest we implicate the innocent." Shi Shinzong said calmly, causing Bai Hao Yisin to narrow his eyes. "Sigh, do all you think I'm a sick cat? To think that back then, this emperor suppressed the ancestors of your ancestors." The more Bai Hao Yisin thought about it, the more annoyed he became. He leaped up and flew 100,000 feet into the sky. Shi Shinzong leapt up as well. As he flew up, he drew his sword. "Today, I'll show you what this emperor is capable of." Bai Hao Yisin's lips curled up into a condescending smile. Immediately after, he shook his arms and self-destructed. There was a loud bang. He turned into a bright sun that gave off a resplendent light. Shi Shinzong, who was quickly rising into the air, was unable to dodge in time. His eyes widened as his body was inundated by the light. On Skyfall, a training ground had been built halfway up the mountain. Thousands of third-generation disciples were practicing the 100-star sky-covering formation. Zhou Xuanji stood on the cliff and looked down at them. His face was expressionless, and it was hard to tell whether he was happy or worried. Qin Bantian suddenly appeared behind him and asked excitedly, "Court Lord, I heard that you brought back a special fruit. Where is mine?" Previously, he was training nearby and fighting demons, so he missed the time for Zhou Xuanji to split the fruits. Zhou Xuanji glanced at him and said, "Didn't you say that the 10,000-year prince is invincible? Why do you need the colorful celestial fruit?" Qin Bantian panicked. He immediately slapped his own mouth, his face full of regret. "Court master, I was wrong," Qin Bantian said sincerely, but it was a pity that Zhou Xuanji was unmoved. "How about this? If you can take one of my palm strikes, I'll give it to you. I won't use any spiritual energy," Zhou Xuanji said as he smiled. Hearing this, Qin Bantian immediately felt quite nervous. He knew that Zhou Xuanji was a body cultivator. However, after thinking about it carefully, he realized that he was no longer who he was in the past. He might not even be able to withstand a single palm strike, right? He gritted his teeth and said, "We agreed that it would only be one palm. You can't use spiritual power." After that, he channeled the spirit energy in his body and faced Zhou Xuanji nervously. Zhou Xuanji smiled slightly and took a step towards him. He struck out with his right palm, which was as fast as lightning, and landed on his chest. Bang! Chen Banshan's eyes could not keep up with Zhou Xuanji's hand speed at all, and he felt as if he had been hit by a massive mountain. He coughed up blood as he flew back, and in the blink of an eye, he leapt over the cliff and fell into the sea of clouds. Zhou Xuanji was not afraid that something would happen to him. After all, the forest below was dense, and adding on his cultivation, he would not fall to his death. It was a good opportunity to suppress him. This brat had become more and more arrogant in recent years. If this continued, he would develop a conceited personality. Seeing Chen Bantian being knocked down the mountain by Zhou Xuanji, many disciples on the training ground were given a big fright. Martial Uncle Chen was sent flying by the patriarch. He must have offended the patriarch. That's right, he's too proud and condescending. Ha ha ha, serve him right. How powerful do you think the patriarch is now? A year later, he will fight with the Sword Saint. Who will win? The patriarch will surely win. The disciples whispered to each other as they trained. Ning Zifeng, who was standing at the front, cried out coldly, "Whoever gets distracted again, I will punish him to walk up and down the mountain 100 times." The disciples heard him and shuddered in their hearts. No one dared to whisper to each other anymore. They looked up again, but Zhou Xuanji was no longer there. In the next period of time, many cultivators at the border of the northern wilderness region headed toward the Sword Emperor Canyon. The northern wilderness region was vast after all. Many people spent years and still could not traverse it. Ordinary people could easily die on the way. Zhou Xuanji was not in a hurry. To him, Skyfall was not far from the Sword Emperor Canyon. With his speed, he could reach there in half a month. He continued to cultivate to get used to his body after merging with the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. And so, Fenyu Dragon King, Lin Chang'e, and Ning Zifeng became his training targets. The demon and the human were in a miserable state. Zhou Xuanji could catch them off guard without using any sword techniques. Universal Attraction could suck them toward Zhou Xuanji and then attack them with punches and kicks. It was very uncomfortable for them, as though they could not withstand even one punch. Half a year later, Zhou Xuanji broke through to Great Realization Level 9 with the help of the colorful celestial fruits. If he consumed all of them, he could break through to Level 10. But he did not do so because he wanted to help others. To him, the difference of one stage was not a big deal. If he could break through to Great Tribulation Scattered Immortal directly, it would be a different story. With the colorful celestial fruits, most of his trusted followers broke through one stage, while those at the Great Realization stage could break through 1 or 2 stages. The spirit energy they needed to break through was far less than Zhou Xuanji's. According to Zhou Xuanji's estimation, he needed 10 times more spirit energy to break through at the same stage. This process could make his foundation more solid. This day, Jiang Shui broke through to Astral Projection Level 7. She had already eaten 5 colorful celestial fruits, and no one dared to object. There were dozens of colorful celestial fruits in the Supreme Storage, but Zhou Xuanji did not reveal them. The two sat in the secret cave. There was a small lake in front of them, and the colorful celestial tree stood at the center. All sorts of gems were embedded on the walls, illuminating the secret cave. Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes and said with a smile, "At this rate, you can break through to spirit refinement in a few years." He was shocked in his heart. Jiang Shui absorbed the colorful celestial fruits faster than Zhongming, Demon Monarch, Huang Lianxin, Beishao Wang Jian, and Han Shenhua. Of course, she was still inferior to the 2 10,000-year princes. Having heard that, Jiang Shui opened her eyes and stuck out her tongue. "It's all because you favor me. Or else, how could I break through so quickly?" The two of them had been together since they were young. She did not reject the colorful celestial fruits. She could only protect herself after she became more powerful, and Zhou Xuanji could do other things more freely. Zhou Xuanji said with a smile, "Come, read the fortunes of the others. Let's see what you can divine with your improved cultivation. Jiang Shui immediately closed her eyes and began divining with her fingers. She did not try to divine Zhou Xuanji, Meng Tianlang, or Chunban Tian because she had tried, but it was useless. This time, she chose Chongming Demon Monarch. After a while, she frowned and opened her eyes, saying, "Why can't I even divine the old bull?" Daoya Old Man once said that there were two outcomes that could not be predicted. The first was that the opponent was much stronger than him, and the second was that the opponent was about to die. The difference between her and Chongming Demon Monarch was not huge. Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji chuckled. "Looks like he's going to die." His tone was relaxed because he did not believe in fate. Knowing the future meant that one could change it. Jiang Shui refused to believe it and began to deduce other people. She was shocked to find that she could no longer predict the future of the people she had predicted before. She panicked and quickly brought Zhou Xuanji to find Daoya Old Man. Calm. Wonderful bookstore calm. Chapter 325. After hearing Jiang Shui's words, Daoya Old Man fell into deep thought. Your cultivation base has already increased by leaps and bounds. You shouldn't be unable to divine it. There is only one possibility. The future has changed, and they're all going to die. He said in a deep voice, and his expression was a little ugly. After all, they had been relying on each other for decades. Didn't this mean that there was an extremely powerful existence that wanted to kill them all? Thinking of this, he also began to calculate. The next moment, puff, Daoya Old Man spat out a mouthful of blood, which splattered on the ground. This attracted the attention of Beixiao Wangjian and Huang Lianxin, who were practicing their swordsmanship not far away. Jiang Shui quickly supported him so that he didn't fall down. Zhou Xuanji was speechless and asked, "Old Man, can you do it or not? I feel that your divination ability is getting weaker and weaker." He had never seen Jiang Shui vomit blood, but Daoya Old Man would vomit blood from time to time. It's over. It's over. The death calamity enveloped us. I knew that we would all die, but I didn't expect that the ending would not change. Except for you. We might all die, Daoya Old Man smiled bitterly. It was a sad feeling of man proposes, but God disposes. Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes. Could it be that someone would attack Skyfall while he was challenging the Sword Saint? He thought of his enemies. Sunlight Emperor. Oh my God. Bai Hao Yisun. There were also countless experts coveting the Tianxia map. It was indeed possible. He frowned. Could it be that he was going to bring his trusted aides to the Sword Emperor Canyon? If that was the case, who would guard Skyfall? Daoya Old Man sat up straight and began to heal himself. Jiang Shui comforted him. Xuanji, don't think too much. It might not be now. It might be after you ascend. Zhou Xuanji's cultivation speed was simply too fast. Even though he had said that he wanted everyone to ascend together, everyone knew that Zhou Xuanji would most likely ascend before them. He could not allow them to delay Zhou Xuanji for thousands of years, or even longer. Zhou Xuanji heard him and felt that it made sense. However, he was still a little worried. Do you want me to get Xian Xianghua to come back and protect you for a while? Zhou Xuanji asked, but where could he find Xian Xianghua? Daoya Old Man shook his head and said, I just calculated it again. We will still be here in 3 years, but the future that cannot be calculated is 100 years later. Having heard this, Zhou Xuanji felt at ease. 100 years. It seemed like he had to urge everyone to cultivate well. In the blink of an eye, Zhou Xuanji welcomed his 54th birthday. Analyzed that the sword owner has reached 54 years old. Gotcha started. Ding. Congratulations. The sword owner has obtained Gold Silent Observation Sword. Tri-Sun Blazing Chi Robe. That's it. Zhou Xuanji, who was teaching Chun Bantian, frowned. Just a gold-ranked divine sword and a robe? This was the worst luck he had had in 20 years. The Tri-Sun Blazing Chi Robe is not bad. It's hard for anyone below the Great Tribulation, loose, immortal realm to damage it. Even if it's damaged, it can recover rapidly. The sword spirit's voice resounded in Zhou Xuanji's mind. It seemed to have sensed Zhou Xuanji's disdain. Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji immediately returned to his wooden hut and prepared to try it out. After Chen Bantian saw him leave, he scratched his head awkwardly. He thought that he had done something wrong and made him angry. After a while, Zhou Xuanji walked out of the wooden hut. Chen Bantian glanced over, and his eyes widened in shock. Zhou Xuanji was wearing a white robe with many flame patterns on it. His shoulders and back each had a crimson sun imprinted on them, and within each sun was a fiery bird. They looked so lifelike, as if they could fly out at any moment. After wearing the Tri-Sun blazing chi robe, he looked even more majestic. Moreover, he was wearing the Tyrant Emperor ring, which made Chun Bantian feel like a god was walking toward him. Zhou Xuanji was pleased with Chun Bantian's expression. He looked toward the horizon and muttered, "It's time to depart." The battle at Sword Emperor Canyon would be an opportunity for him to soar. Of course, it could also plummet, but he was confident. That evening, Zhou Xuanji rode on Zhou Xiaoqi and left. The others stayed behind to guard Skyfall. Zhou Xiaoqi was a fire Qilin after all. Now that it was 6 meters tall, it looked mighty and domineering. Using it as a mount naturally made it look cool. The little black snake came along with him. Zhou Xuanji did not want to bring it along, but he could not resist its coaxing and pestering. It was only a meter long and coiled on Zhou Xiaoqi's head, so it was easy to overlook it. "Master, I think we must be on the right track for this battle. We will only appear when everyone thinks that you are afraid to fight," the little black snake suggested. Its cultivation had already reached 6th rank and could transform into a human form, but it still preferred its current form. Its nimble movements could lower the enemy's guard. "We'll see when the time comes," Zhou Xuanji said calmly. He looked into the distance. The horizon under the dusk looked like it was on fire. It was a poignant scene with a murderous aura. Sword Emperor Canyon. It was located in the north of the central region of the Northern Wilderness region. The surrounding 10,000 miles were undulating wastelands. Countless canyons crisscrossed the land, looking like the cracked skin of the land. The Sword Emperor Canyon was dozens of meters wide and unfathomably deep. On both sides of the canyon stood a stone sword that was hundreds of meters long, looking extremely domineering. Legend had it that before the Hegemon Sword Emperor ascended, he had an epiphany. With one slash, he created a canyon that was tens of thousands of meters long and unfathomably deep. It was the Sword Emperor Canyon. The stone swords on both sides were not created by the Hegemon Sword Emperor, but by the Hegemon Sword Sect to commemorate this. After 10,000 years, the Sword Emperor Canyon had become an extremely famous place in the Northern Wilderness region. Cultivators often came to watch and admire the glory of a great emperor. Currently, there were already tens of thousands of cultivators cultivating on both sides of the Sword Emperor Canyon. They came from different factions and were all here to watch the battle between the Sword Emperor and the Sword Saint. Looking behind them, there were people rushing towards the Sword Emperor Canyon from all directions. Some walked on foot, some rode on their enchanted artifacts, and some rode on their mounts. It was a majestic scene. Great Zhou's carriages had also arrived. Zhou Qingxin sat on his horse and looked ahead as he said in amazement, "In this world, there are not many heroes with such prestige." There was still a month before the final battle, and yet so many people had already arrived. It was difficult to imagine how many people would be watching the battle. Princess Xuanya sat on a banana leaf and levitated in the air, keeping pace with Zhou Qingxin. She asked curiously, "Imperial brother, do you think Xuanji can defeat the Sword Saint?" Because of the Sword Monarch of Great Zhou, the people of Great Zhou had heard of the legend of the Sword Saint since young. The teacher of a great emperor, the most amazing genius in the way of the sword, and so on. All sorts of titles fell on Shi Shenzong's head, and they were no less than the Hegemon Sword Emperors. In fact, he was even more legendary. Shi Shenzong's death was due to him committing suicide. As for the reason, no one knew. I'm not sure. After all, the Sword Saint is an ancient expert who could kill Tian. However, as long as Xuanji performs well, even if he loses, it will increase his fame. After all, he is not even 100 years old, while the Sword Saint cultivated for 10,000 years before he died, Zhou Qingxin said. He spoke conservatively. No matter how talented Zhou Xuanji was, it would be very difficult for him to defeat Shi Shenzong. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 326. Hearing that Zhou Qingxin was not sure if Zhou Xuanji could win, Princess Xuanya curled her lip. She really hoped that Zhou Xuanji could win. No matter what, Zhou Xuanji was her younger brother and Great Zhou's greatest pride. Because of Zhou Xuanji, this generation of Great Zhou felt an unprecedented pride. They felt that Great Zhou was the most powerful Great Zhou, including her. If Zhou Xuanji lost to the Sword Saint, she would be disappointed. After a while, Great Zhou's carriages stopped 1,000 meters away from Sword Emperor Canyon, far away from the crowd. Seeing Great Zhou's military flag, many cultivators began discussing and pointing at it. However, Great Zhou was not the first empire to arrive. The Hunyuan Empire had arrived long ago. There were hundreds of soldiers with powerful cultivations. They had already set up tents. Divine General Tang, one of the 4 divine generals, was looking at a map in his tent. Those who did not know would think that they were going to war. Divine General Tang placed his hands on his waist and frowned. His tower-like figure gave off an immense pressure. No one spoke in the tent. Sure, Shenzong chose to fight at Sword Emperor Canyon. It's definitely not that simple. Back then, the Hegemoan Sword Emperor had an epiphany here too. There must be some unknown secrets in Sword Emperor Canyon. You must survey the surrounding terrain for me. When the Sword Emperor and Sword Saint fight, there will surely be a heavenly phenomenon. Divine General Tang said with a deep voice. His eyes were filled with anticipation. Ever since Yang Di wanted to establish the Great Fate Empire, the Hunyuan Empire had been ridiculed. After all, the Hunyuan Empire's goal had always been to establish the Great Fate Empire. If Yang Di beat them to it, their bragging for thousands of years would become a slap in the face. Yes, the soldiers replied in unison. Not only the Hunyuan Empire, but the other factions also had their own goals. This decisive battle became complicated and confusing. Above the white clouds, Daoseeker flew on the clouds with his hands behind his back. His expression was calm. "Come out. You have been following me for so long," he said suddenly. After a while, a figure appeared beside him. It was Feng Qiu. Feng Qiu looked at Daoseeker with a complicated expression and said with gritted teeth, "Who are you? Why are you investigating Zhou Xuanji?" Ever since Zhou Xuanji obtained the Tianxia map, he had been paying close attention to Zhou Xuanji. But he realized that there were others investigating Daoseeker as well. One of them was even more powerful than him. It had not been easy for him to track Xiu Dao. He did not know how strong this person was, so he could only tail him. Daoseeker glanced at him and said unhurriedly, "You and I are on the same path. It's a pity that your divine abilities are inferior to mine. I advise you to give up on your delusions about Zhou Xuanji. He's already mine. If you want to participate in this game, you can find someone else." Hearing this, Feng Qiu felt incredibly angry. I was the one who discovered the Tianxia map, and I was the one who set up a trap to lure others to take the Tianxia map. In other words, I nurtured Zhou Xuanji, and an expert like you likes to steal the fruits of others' labor? Can't we cultivators talk about reason? He did not continue speaking. He was also afraid of angering Daoseeker. "You're wrong. You don't understand Zhou Xuanji at all. His greatest reliance is not the Tianxia map," Daoseeker said as he shook his head. His tone changed and said coldly, "If I see you scheming against Zhou Xuanji again, don't blame me for not holding back." Feng Qiu was so angry that his entire body trembled, but he didn't dare to say anything. He already felt a wave of killing intent. He had never encountered such a killing intent before. It made him break out in a cold sweat and his primordial spirit tremble. Finally, he flicked his sleeves and left. Daoseeker mumbled, "Mortals must abandon everything if they want to pursue their destiny. You're still far from that." He turned around and continued walking. His destination was Sword Emperor Canyon. Sun Hill. In a courtyard, Yang Di was practicing calligraphy. A child stood beside him. It was Fu Hao, Hulin Chang'a was wary of. Fu Hao was the only person who could follow Yang Di. Because he had never fought, he was not listed in the Northern Wilderness Top 100. Great Emperor, aren't you going to take a look at the battle at Sword Emperor Canyon? Fu Hao asked. He flew up slowly until he was 1 meter above the ground. He wanted to see what Yang Di was writing. There was only one word on the scroll. Luck. Yang Di looked straight ahead and said, "What's there to see? No matter who wins, they will challenge this emperor." Fu Hao nodded and said, "No one is a match for the great emperor." He rolled his eyes and cupped his fists, saying, "Why don't you let me take a look?" Shi Shenzong and Zhou Xuanji were not simple. One was the teacher of a great emperor, and the other was the most talented cultivator in history. The battle between the two would definitely be exciting. Yang Di replied softly. Sunlight Emperor replied softly. Hearing this, Fu Hao immediately bowed and left. After Fu Hao left, Yang Di looked up. He glanced at the direction in which Fu Hao left and muttered to himself, "Can't hold it in anymore." The corners of his mouth curled up into a strange smile. The day of the final battle arrived soon. Hundreds of thousands of people had already gathered at Sword Emperor Canyon. Looking down from the sky, the ground was filled with people. In a corner in the north, a man was surrounded by dozens of women, which attracted many people's attention. It was Bai Hao Yisan. He was lying on a makeshift bed and enjoying the touch of beauties. Although he looked satisfied, his face was pale and bloodless, especially those dark circles under his eyes, which made people feel as if his body had been hollowed out. After that self-explosion, he spent half a year to reform his body. The only thing that comforted him was that the beauties were still around. Compared to those women, they were more conscientious. Maybe the Sword Saint can't come, Bai Hao Yisan grinned. During this period of time, he had been bad-mouthing Shi Shenzong and cursing him, because he had already guessed that the kid from half a year ago was Shi Shenzong. At this moment, a massive aura descended and covered the ground. All the noise quieted down. Everyone looked up and saw Shi Shenzong, who was dressed in black, levitating in the air and looking down at the ground. His face was cold and stern, and his eyes were sharp. He was like a high and mighty god, which made people revere him. He seemed to be looking for Zhou Xuanji. After that, under everyone's gazes, he slowly landed on a stone sword that was 300 meters tall and sat down cross-legged. When he sat down, the hundreds of thousands of people became excited. Is he the Sword Saint? So domineering. That aura just now? It's the first time I've felt such a powerful aura. I heard that he's the person closest to the great emperor. He's even more domineering than I imagined. I feel that Zhou Xuanji will lose. It's normal for him to lose. The key is how long Zhou Xuanji can last. I can finally witness the Sword Saint's glory. I feel that even my sword is trembling. All sorts of discussions sounded out. Everyone was convinced by the Sword Saint's spirit. Even Great Zhou side had to admit that Shi Shenzong fulfilled all the requirements of an invincible cultivator in their hearts. Just by sitting there, he made them revere him as if they were looking at a great mountain. Far away, Fu Hao sat on a giant rock and swung his feet. Such a great Sword Saint. He has already stepped into the ascension stage and can ascend at any time, he said in amazement. Everyone's ascension stage was different. The earliest was the emperor, who could ascend at the great realization stage. Normally speaking, one could ascend after reaching second tribulation scattered immortal. Shi Shenzong's cultivation was higher than second tribulation scattered immortal. Come, wonderful book house. Chapter 327. After Shi Shenzong descended, the atmosphere around Sword Emperor Canyon became quite lively. Hundreds of thousands of people were shaken by Shi Shenzong's boldness, and they were quite curious about how powerful he was. With their current senses, they felt that no one could defeat this Sword Saint. Time continued to pass. More and more people arrived. In less than 3 days, the number of cultivators present exceeded 1 million. Princess Xuanya stood on a banana leaf and looked around as she said in amazement, "So many people." And they were not ordinary people. If it was her, Facing so many cultivators, she would not dare to act. Zhou Qingxin also felt quite amazed. The Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji's rallying power was simply too great. Before, Shi Shenzong had challenged other powerful cultivators, but he did not have such a great commotion. At that moment, Yang Xindi and Great Qin's emperor walked over, surrounded by their own subordinates. Seeing them, Zhou Qingxin hurriedly got up and went to greet them. The three emperors had already formed an alliance through letters, and after Zhou Qingxin invited them into the tent, they started to chat. The topic was naturally Zhou Xuanji. 20 years have passed, and Zhou Xuanji is definitely not the same as before. Everyone, don't worry too much, Zhou Qingxin said as he lightly swirled his wine cup. Zhou Xuanji's most terrifying aspect was his talent in the way of the sword and cultivation. It had been so many years since he became the world's second, and no one could imagine how powerful he was now. However, Shi Shenzong was too godly. In the hearts of the northern wilderness people, he was synonymous with invincibility. Even if he died, he would die at their hands. Yang Xindi nodded and said, "The Sword Emperor's talent is undeniable, but he's too young. In time, he will definitely surpass Shi Shenzong. If he encounters any trouble, our three empires can help him." Even though the three empires did not have top-tier experts, they had their foundations. If they all went up together, it would not be too difficult to save Zhou Xuanji. After all, the Sword Saint cared about his reputation. If he killed the most talented member of a younger generation, would he not be afraid of being condemned by others? Great Qin's emperor nodded. He did not want Zhou Xuanji to die the most. His son still needed Zhou Xuanji's guidance. The three emperors started to discuss the rescue plan. In the blink of an eye, another 10 days passed. There were more than 2 million cultivators gathered around Sword Emperor Canyon. At a glance, the ground was filled with people. There were also many mighty-looking mounts and demon pets. Most people would occasionally glance at Shi Shenzong, who was standing on the stone sword. Shi Shenzong sat there, his treasured sword resting on his legs. He waited patiently, not even batting an eyelid. The Hegemon Sword Sect and the 10,000 Swords Divine Mountain sent many cultivators to observe. The two factions were not too far away from each other, and they often had conflicts with each other. However, because Shi Shenzong was present, they did not fight. Sect Master, the Sword Emperor wouldn't dare to come, right? A disciple of the Hegemon Sword Sect asked carefully. The Hegemon Sword Sect master glared at him and scolded, "Shut up." Lin Chang'e had already become Zhou Xuanji's disciple, and if Zhou Xuanji was humiliated, Lin Chang'e would also be humiliated. As his father, he would also lose face. As such, no matter how much he disliked Zhou Xuanji, he had to support Zhou Xuanji. The Hegemon Sword Sect master turned to look at Shi Haiming in the distance and could not help but grit his teeth. In the past, when he faced Shi Haiming, he always held his head high. Ever since Shi Shenzong had revived, their attitudes had been completely reversed. Feeling his gaze, Shi Haiming glanced back at him disdainfully. He was so angry that he almost rushed over. It was not just them. The other cultivators who had come to observe also felt quite annoyed. If Zhou Xuanji was afraid to fight, wouldn't they have come for nothing? Could it be that the Sword Emperor doesn't dare to come? If I was him, I wouldn't dare to come either. Impossible. He said that he would come to fight. Can't he go back on his word? Isn't Zhou Xuanji said to be fearless? Despicable. I've been waiting here for half a year. The cultivators all whispered among themselves. Because there were so many people, the heavens and earth were filled with noise. At that moment, Shi Shenzong suddenly opened his eyes and looked in a direction. Bai Hao Yisin, who had been enjoying the gentleness of a beauty, sat up and looked over with narrowed eyes as he muttered, "This boy's growth speed is a bit ridiculous." The beauties around him looked at each other, not knowing what he was talking about. A legend of the way of the sword. Now that I've seen you, you're indeed extraordinary. It's a pity that you're going to be defeated by my sword. Zhou Xuanji's heroic laughter suddenly sounded throughout the sky, causing the 2 million cultivators to feel incredibly excited. He's here. It was finally here. Zhou Qingxin, Yang Xindi, the emperor of Great Shun, Princess Xuanya, the hegemon sword sect master, Shi Haiming, and the others all stood up and waited in anticipation. A ball of fire appeared on the horizon at an extremely fast speed. When the flame came close, everyone stared at it, and their eyes widened. What a divine fire qilin! Zhou Xuanji stood on Zhou Xiaoqi's back and crossed his arms in front of his chest. He smiled, and his tri-sun flame qi robe danced in the wind. His black hair danced recklessly, and his eyes were wild and arrogant, looking down on the world. The cultivators were shocked to find that Zhou Xuanji's aura was not any weaker than Shi Shinzong's. Both of them had an aura of invincibility. Zhou Qingxin, Yang Xindi, Princess Xuanya, and the others felt incredibly dazed. They had not seen Zhou Xuanji in a long time, and they felt as if everything was unreal. Was this guy already this strong? The hegemon sword sect lord looked at Zhou Xuanji with a complicated gaze. He had to admit that Zhou Xuanji had already surpassed him. Even before they fought, he knew that he was not a match for Zhou Xuanji. No wonder my son worshipped him as his master. How brilliant! Thinking about that, he felt quite pleased. Now, he and Zhou Xuanji could be considered allies. As long as they were not enemies, the stronger Zhou Xuanji was, the better. Zhou Xuanji leapt up and landed on another 300-meter tall stone sword, and he looked at Shi Shinzong. Zhou Xiaoqi flew far away to avoid being accidentally injured. The Sword Saint and Sword Emperor looked at each other, 300 meters apart. The clash of their gazes caused everyone to fall silent and hold their breaths. A historical legend against a current legend. Before the two of them had even fought, all of the spectators felt their blood boiling. "You're not bad." A look of approval appeared in Shi Shinzong's eyes as he said softly. However, his voice traveled clearly into everyone's ears. Zhou Xuanji smirked and gave a confident smile as he said, "Shi Shinzong, you're not bad either. However, I'm going to become the Sword Emperor, the most powerful Sword Emperor since ancient times. I want people in the future to only think of me when they mention the Sword Emperor and not anyone else. As such, losing to me is not a humiliation for you." Arrogant. Everyone felt worried for him. Not only had this fellow humiliated Shi Shinzong, but he was also going to trample on the 9 emperors of the Way of the Sword. Was he not afraid of losing? Shi Shinzong suddenly laughed loudly. His laughter was very cold, but it did not contain any killing intent. "Looking at you reminds me of myself in the past. However, your cultivation is too weak and is only at Great Realization level 9. No matter how powerful your cultivation in the Way of the Sword is, you will not be a match for me." After laughing, he said calmly. However, these words caused the spectators' expressions to change. The Sword Emperor had already reached Great Realization level 9. Heavens! Calm! Wonderful book house. Chapter 328. Clang! Shi Shinzong drew his sword. His sword was 3 fingers wide, and its blade was slightly black. The 2 sides of the blade were silver, and it was incredibly sharp. Many strange black words were engraved on it, giving off a heavy sense of history. As soon as this sword appeared, the temperature in the heavens and the earth fell by many degrees. A gust of cold wind swept out, causing all of the spectators to shiver. This sword is called the Divine Way, a saint among swords, Shi Shinzong said coldly. When swordsmen fought, they naturally had to introduce their swords first. The Divine Way was ranked extremely high in the Northern Wilderness sword records, and it was even higher than some Sword Emperor's swords. The hegemon Sword Emperor's hegemongio was below it. The spectating sword cultivators all looked on with desire, and some people's breathing became ragged, looking fervent. Zhou Xuanji flipped his right hand and took out Heavenly Retribution Martial Punishment, as he said, "This is Heavenly Retribution Martial Punishment, a sword of the heavenly law." Following this, he flipped his left hand and took out God Ghost Howl. This sword is called God Ghost Howl, a ghost sword that can make immortals and gods howl. He continued to take out other legendary swords, which floated behind him. This sword is called Ancient God Sword. This sword is called Sky Extinguishing Sword. This sword is called Great Heavenly Dark Jade Sword. This sword is called White Dragonbone Sword. All of the legendary swords above gold grade were taken out by him. They appeared out of thin air one after another and floated behind him. Everyone fell silent and stared at him, taking out legendary swords one after another. Those who admired Zhou Xuanji became incredibly excited. The Sword Emperor was so domineering. Just in terms of introducing swords, he had already surpassed Shi Shinzong. At least with these words, Zhou Xuanji sounded more imposing. After Zhou Xuanji spoke, he did not wait for Shi Shinzong to speak and directly activated Sword Master Haki. In that moment, all of the cultivators' swords in the surrounding 100 kilometers started to violently tremble. This is my sword. What's going on? Why can't I control my sword? Could it be the Sword Emperor and the Sword Saint? 10,000 swords resonating, such a realm in the way of the sword. The cultivators exclaimed one after another. 70 to 80% of the cultivators carried a sword. Not all of them were sword cultivators, but many spells could be performed with a sword. Moreover, the sword had the air of a gentleman, so very few people would hate it. In front of me, all swords bowed down. If I don't become the sword sovereign, who will? Zhou Xuanji said as he proudly laughed. As he spoke, all of the cultivators' swords flew out of their sheaths and shot towards Shi Shinzong. Shi Shinzong narrowed his eyes and did not attack. This was because the swords stopped very quickly. They were dozens of meters away from him, arranged in all directions, with the tips of the swords pointed at him. Everyone was shocked. In their eyes, Shi Shinzong was surrounded by hundreds of thousands of swords. It was a majestic scene. The sect master of the Hegemon sword sect and Shi Haiming had ugly expressions on their faces. Their swords also flew out of their control. The disciples of the 10,000 Swords Divine Mountain were extremely embarrassed. Their swords were actually pointed at their ancestor. This was simply disgraceful. This kid, Bai Hao Isin, stood up with a serious expression. If he was not wrong, this was a type of divine art. The ability to summon swords. He inexplicably thought of someone, and fear flashed in his eyes. Shi Shinzong's expression became unprecedentedly serious. He looked at Zhou Xuanji and said word by word, "Zhou Xuanji, I acknowledge you as the sword sovereign. You are qualified to be my opponent." As he spoke, he swung his sword with his right hand, and sword chi swept out. Hundreds of thousands of swords were sent flying back to their owners. Such a method was not inferior to Zhou Xuanji's. The cultivators all leapt up to catch the swords. They had a mental connection with their swords, so they naturally would not be mistaken. Now, everyone began to look forward to the fight. Zhou Xuanji did not seem to be any weaker than Shi Shinzong. The two of them looked at each other and leapt up at the same time. In that instant, the two stone swords that were 300 meters tall directly shattered. Seeing this, the sect master of the Hegemon sword sect felt his heart shatter. The two of them turned into sword light and shot into the sky. Ooh, waves of ghostly wails sounded throughout the sky. Zhou Xuanji directly activated Heavenly Retribution Martial Punishment and God Ghost Wails. Facing the legendary Sword Saint, he did not dare to be careless. The two of them quickly clashed together, and sword light exploded like fireworks, illuminating the sky. Zhou Xuanji used dual sword wills, the sky dominating divine sword and heavenly lights. His right hand was heavy and powerful, while his left hand was ever-changing. Facing his barrage of attacks, Shi Shinzong did not fall into a disadvantage. He easily blocked Zhou Xuanji's two swords with just one sword. His sword speed was simply too fast. It was Zhou Xuanji's first time encountering such a swift opponent. As expected of the Sword Saint, his reputation is well-deserved. Zhou Xuanji's heart trembled as he thought to himself. He began to use his full strength. Shi Shinzong was a little shocked in his heart. He did not expect Zhou Xuanji to have such exquisite sword techniques. He used two sword techniques at the same time. They did not clash, but they were extremely compatible. Genius. Although he admired Zhou Xuanji, Shi Shenzong did not go easy on him. Such a genius was worth defeating. At this moment, Shi Shenzong suddenly sped up. A faint white light appeared on the surface of his body, and his gaze became sharper. Sword will. The Saint Path sword turned from a gale to a tempest in his hand. The sword chi was like a tsunami, sending Zhou Xuanji flying back. Shi Shenzong stayed where he was and quickly swung his sword. A blazing sun appeared behind him out of nowhere. The blazing sun expanded rapidly, and its diameter reached hundreds of meters. It was a shocking sight. A massive sword might enveloped the heavens and earth, making everyone feel extremely suppressed. They even felt a sense of suffocation. Zhou Xuanji activated the Ancestor Dragon sword straight away and transformed into a 5-clawed golden dragon. His body was 3,000 meters long and looked majestic and domineering. His entire body shone with a divine golden radiance. Shi Shenzong narrowed his eyes and slashed out. The blazing sun behind him leaped over his head and slammed into the 5-clawed golden dragon. Boom! A world-shaking explosion suddenly sounded out, causing the ears of the spectators to ring. The 5-clawed golden dragon was restrained by the blazing sun, and dragon roars could be heard continuously. The scene was so shocking that everyone was dumbfounded. This, so powerful. I think they are all qualified to become the top cultivator in the world. The Sword Emperor is so powerful. He's on par with the teacher of a great emperor, Mighty, who said that the Sword Emperor would lose. So exciting. This trip was not in vain. The cultivators were all incredibly excited and continuously cried out. The 5-clawed golden dragon powerfully tore apart the blazing sun, but Shi Shenzong quickly rushed over and tore apart the 5-clawed golden dragon with a single strike. Zhou Xuanji was not heavily injured. He gripped his 2 swords and unleashed universal attraction. Shi Shenzong felt a powerful suction force, and his body could not help but slow down. To Zhou Xuanji, this was enough. He turned and unleashed 10,000 ultimate steps. Shi Shenzong flipped his hand and blocked Zhou Xuanji's 10,000 ultimate steps. Their gazes met. Their gazes were cold and sharp, and they could both see the shock in each other's eyes. They were both shocked by their respective abilities. Zhou Xuanji continued to swing his 2 swords. Shi Shenzong received the swords, but he was sent flying back. Following this, every time the swords clashed, he would be sent flying back, causing his face to become more and more pale. He suddenly laughed and said, "So it's like that." After saying this, he once again closed in on Zhou Xuanji. This time, he did not circulate his spirit energy. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 329. After Shi Shenzong saw through world reincarnation, he could rely on his physical strength and sword techniques to contend with Zhou Xuanji. Gradually, he started to use different sword techniques, which were ever-changing. Zhou Xuanji could not switch sword techniques either. The two of them began to compare their sword techniques. Their bodies continuously moved about, and sword flowers flashed as all sorts of abnormal signs appeared. There were many powerful experts among the spectators, and they were completely mesmerized by this. Both of their cultivations are so powerful. They can switch between so many sword techniques so smoothly and smoothly. In other words, Zhou Xuanji is not inferior to the Sword Saint. It's not just strength. It's also the foundation of the way of the sword. Indeed, legends say that the Sword Emperor can develop a sword will from a high-grade sword technique in a day. In other words, the Sword Emperor is more powerful than the Sword Saint because he's simply too young. I support Zhou Xuanji. He killed so many great demons for the human race, and his contributions are even greater than Yang Di's. Look at Shi Shenzong. When he was alive, did he ever contribute to the human race? You might say he did, but that's the hegemon Sword Emperor. However, even after becoming a great emperor, he did not destroy the demon race. As they watched the battle, they discussed among themselves. Zhou Xuanji's support grew louder and louder. A legend was a legend in the end, and it was too far away from them. Zhou Xuanji was a top-tier hero in the world, who did not want to surpass their predecessors. However, many people still felt that Shi Shenzong was more powerful. Both of them have the potential to become great emperors. Bai Hao Yisan muttered to himself with a serious expression. He had seen countless geniuses, and both Zhou Xuanji and Shi Shenzong were among the top. He had seen countless geniuses, and Zhou Xuanji and Shi Shenzong were both at the top. He had seen countless geniuses, and both Zhou Xuanji and Shi Shenzong were among the top. If these two people were 90,000 years ago, it would be difficult to imagine what heights they would have reached. Clang, clang, clang. Zhou Xuanji and Shi Shenzong quickly clashed, turning into two rays of sword light that danced above the sea of clouds. This fellow is becoming more powerful. Zhou Xuanji inwardly felt quite shocked. He had used the power of two intimidating spirit legendary swords. And even though he could make up for the difference in cultivation, he could not suppress Shi Shenzong. He had underestimated Shi Shenzong. This person was truly powerful. Shi Shenzong felt even more shocked. This boy only had great realization realm level 9 cultivation, and he was able to fight evenly with him. One should know that his strength was enough to defeat a third tribulation bodiless immortal. Even Xinyuan Zhou was no match for him. This child's talents surpassed his. At that moment, Zhou Xuanji's arms shook as he unleashed sword chi soar. Countless traces of sword chi burst out from his body, forcing Shi Shenzong back. He immediately used the Emperor's Way thousand-hand sword Buddha. A golden Buddha that was thousands of meters tall appeared behind him. Thousands of arms grew out from the back of the golden Buddha, each holding a giant sword. Crackle! Strands of heavenly lightning coiled around the thousand-hand sword Buddha, gathering together to form a thunderbolt. Golden light illuminated the earth. The high and mighty thousand-hand sword Buddha was like an unparalleled deity overlooking the earth. Everyone was dumbfounded. What kind of divine ability was this? Shi Shenzong was also stunned. He looked up at the thousand-hand sword Buddha like an ant looking up at a mountain. This is the Emperor's Way thousand-hand sword Buddha. Sword Saint, give it a try, Zhou Xuanji said with a smile. Following this, his body entered the thousand-hand sword Buddha. Sword intense state. He was the thousand-hand sword Buddha, and the thousand-hand sword Buddha was him. The thousand-hand sword Buddha opened its eyes, and two beams of light shot out. Then, a purple taiji symbol appeared on its forehead. A buzzing sound sounded out, as if a great bell had rung. A vertical purple taiji symbol appeared behind the thousand-hand sword Buddha. It was even bigger than the thousand-hand sword Buddha, and it looked like a holy Buddha's halo, causing the thousand-hand sword Buddha's aura to become even more powerful. The Buddha in my heart does not appear in times of prosperity, but in times of chaos, to save the world from disaster. I will not use my own selfish desires to disturb clan. In the current world, there are no true Buddhas, only Buddhist cultivators who want to slay demons. They also have an undeniable responsibility for the chaos in the human race. As such, I created this sword technique to give the world a bright and peaceful world, to expel impurities and suppress evil. This is the Emperor's Way. Thousand-hand sword Buddha. Zhou Xuanji's voice sounded throughout the heavens and earth, as if a holy Buddha was creating all things. Everyone was shocked, and they immediately thought of Danyuan Monastery. The conflict between the righteous and demonic sects had always been driven by Danyuan Monastery. When a human race was in chaos, Danyuan Monastery could not do anything. Soon, they started to think about other things. On the ground, there were also Danyuan Monastery's monks. Hearing this, their faces became red. Even though they were furious, they could not help but think about it. Were they really doing the right thing? Shi Shenzong laughed. He raised the Saint Path sword, and the blazing sun once again appeared behind him. It was as tall as the thousand-hand sword Buddha. Sword Emperor, you are indeed powerful. Sword will is incredibly easy for you, but you're still a bit lacking. You should know that sword will is not the end of the way of the sword. Today, I will show you what is above sword will. Shi Shenzong said as he coldly harumphed, his tone filled with pride. He was the sword saint, the saint of the way of the sword. How could he allow a junior to surpass him? As he spoke, the blazing sun behind him rippled. The thousand-hand sword Buddha narrowed its eyes and did not immediately act. Zhou Xuanji had heard the sword spirits say that there was a realm above sword will. Could it be that Shi Shenzong had already reached it? He wanted to see what it was. The 2 million spectators held their breaths, not daring to even breathe loudly. Clang! The Saint Path sword in Shi Shenzong's hand violently trembled, giving off a clear ringing that was incredibly piercing. Traces of intense flames flowed out of the Saint Path sword, looking like smoke rising up from a chimney. Soon, the intense flames reached a height of 3,000 meters and fused with the blazing sun. Shi Shenzong's entire right arm was wrapped in flames. At a glance, the blazing sun seemed to be connected to him, and his aura grew stronger and stronger. A might that surpassed a third tribulation scattered a mortal. In the distance, Fu Hao opened his eyes wide and cried out in shock, "Sword soul!" The blazing sun on Shi Shenzong's body became more and more corporeal, and the top turned into the upper body of a human. It was incredibly majestic and domineering, and it was not inferior to the thousand-hand sword Buddha at all. Zhou Xuanji could sense that there was no sword chi in the sword soul of fiery flames. Instead, it was formed by gathering the world's spirit chi. Apart from that, there was also an indescribable power. In contrast, his thousand-hand sword Buddha was made of corporeal sword chi. Even though the two looked majestic, they were fundamentally different. Shi Shenzong raised the Saint Path sword slowly with an icy expression and said, "Sword Emperor, I hope you can withstand this sword strike." Just as he spoke, he slashed out with extreme speed. The sword soul on his body turned into a fiery longsword that disappeared in an instant. Before Zhou Xuanji could react, the thousand-hand sword Buddha was cut in half. Boom! Shi Shenzong was blasted back by his own power, and blood spurted out from his body. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared over the horizon and smashed into a tall mountain. No one knew if he was dead or alive. Silence. The heavens and earth fell silent. Zhou Xuanji levitated in the air, his hands trembling. A stream of blood flowed down from his forehead and dyed his handsome face red. He frowned. His gaze was cold, but his heart was in great shock. That sword strike, his world reincarnation, could not completely block it. Come, wonderful book house. Chapter 330. More than 2 million spectators were dumbfounded, and they couldn't believe their eyes. Shi Shenzong had made it sound so powerful, and the raging flame sword soul was incredibly shocking. Its might caused them to tremble in fear. They had thought that the two of them would have a soul-stirring, peerless battle, or that Zhou Xuanji would be heavily injured. But he never expected Shi Shenzong had destroyed the Emperor's Wei thousand-hand sword Buddha with a single swing of his sword, but he had still been forced to kneel. The 10,000 Swords Divine Ridge's master, Shi Huanming, was dumbfounded. How was this possible? Primogenitor, Shi Huanming's entire body trembled. With a thud, he knelt on the ground. The Hegemon Sword sect master did not mock him. He was also shocked. Could it be the world Buddha art? How old is he to be able to cultivate world reincarnation? Bai Hao Yisin swallowed his saliva and looked at Zhou Xuanji with fear in his eyes. He had once witnessed the power of the world Buddha art. That person was the human emperor at that time. Although he was no match for the Renhuang, he was still stunning. If the Renhuang was given another 10,000 years, the one who would be defeated might be the Renhuang. Boom! The whole place was in an uproar. Everyone was talking excitedly. Oh my God, what did I see? The Sword Emperor is mighty, too domineering. Is the Sword Saint dead? That's it, as expected of my belief. Now, who still dares to say that he isn't a Sword Emperor? I knew Zhou Xuanji would win. He's undefeatable. The millions of voices converged together, as if they were about to overturn the heavens. Zhou Qingxin, Princess Xuanya, Yang Xindi, Great Qin's emperor, and the others all excitedly cheered for Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xiaoqi was bouncing on the spot, almost causing the little black snake to faint. High in the sky, Zhou Xuanji tried his best to stabilize his body, making it look like he was fine. In fact, that sword strike had already injured him. If it wasn't for the fact that he had fused with the violet demon monarch's heart, if he had fought Shi Shinzong in the past, he might have been instantly killed by Shi Shinzong's sword. No wonder Xianyuan Zhou died at his hands. So that was how it was. Was this the power of the sword soul? Fast to the point of being unpredictable, tyrannical to the point of shattering mountains and rivers. His heart was burning with passion. He must cultivate a sword soul. At this time, a figure quickly flew over. It was Shi Shinzong. He was covered in blood, but his eyes were still sharp and clear. With the Saint Path sword in his right hand, he locked on his Zhou Xuanji. The Tianxia map continuously provided Zhou Xuanji with spirit energy, and he once again unleashed the Emperor's Wei Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha. The majestic Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha quickly danced, wildly slashing at Shi Shinzong. Shi Shinzong swung his sword to block. Although the Sage Dao sword was far weaker than the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha's golden sword, its power was not inferior at all. It was like a grain of rice striking a roof beam. Sword Saint, your attainments in the way of the sword are indeed impressive, but you are no match for me. Zhou Xuanji loudly laughed. The Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha's power became stronger and stronger, and with the support of heavenly lightning, Shi Shinzong's body became more and more bloody. Your time has passed. As he shouted, the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha used the sky-dominating divine sword. The 1,000 swords merged into one and slashed down furiously. Clang! Shi Shinzong was blasted down and smashed through the ground, kicking up clouds of dust. The surrounding 10 kilometers collapsed, and countless cracks spread in all directions, looking like a spider web that wanted to cover the ground. Puff! Zhou Xuanji coughed up a mouthful of blood, and his arms slightly trembled. The sword soul's might was too powerful and had injured his internal organs. Now that he had used his full strength, he naturally suffered a backlash. However, he did not care. He had to defeat Shi Shinzong. The heavens and earth fell silent. Everyone was shocked by Zhou Xuanji's domineeringness. He looked down at Shi Shinzong and said coldly, "Sword Saint, do you still want to fight?" Rumble. Roiling flames blasted away the dust and rose up from the massive crater like a volcano erupting, rushing into the sky. Shi Shinzong used the intense flames to rush into the sky. His eyes were cold as he stared at Zhou Xuanji and said, "I won't lose." He had his pride. He would either die or win. There was no such thing as losing, nor would there be a tie. The Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha once again slashed out. It was also the sky-dominating divine sword, and it gave off unstoppable momentum. Shi Shinzong unleashed the sword soul, and intense flames flashed as a massive sword that was as long as a mountain range slashed out. It came quickly and disappeared quickly as well. After colliding with the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha's golden sword, it exploded and turned into a sea of flames. Shi Shinzong once again fell. Zhou Xuanji was sent flying, but he managed to stabilize his body in time. Blood continuously flowed out of his mouth, gushing out like a fountain. God damn it, this fellow really doesn't want to live. Zhou Xuanji inwardly swore. Since Shi Shinzong did not want to live, he would go all out. He did not believe that he could not win. Legendary swords appeared above his head, and with a thought, the legendary swords quickly got into formation, casting the ceiling dream sword formation. A violet pillar of light descended from the sword formation, smashing into the ground incredibly quickly, causing the ground to tremble. Rumble, a sandstorm rose and swept across the land, startling the nearby cultivators into hiding. Within the violet light, Shi Shinzong gripped the Saint Path sword and disregarded his injuries as he forcefully stood up. "I'm the Sword Saint, invincible in the mortal realm. Why should I lose?" His sleeves exploded, and he bent his legs as he forcefully broke through the ceiling dream sword formation and once again rushed at Zhou Xuanji. Was this fellow using a cheat to explode his seeds? He still did not die. Zhou Xuanji was infuriated and madly used the power of God Ghost Howl and Heavenly Retribution Martial Punishment. Countless howls filled the heavens and earth, creating a chilling scene. Even with his powerful physique, the surface of his body started to crack, and blood flowed out. The pain was like a blood-red flame. The violet Tai Chi diagram on his forehead gave off light, and he let go of the legendary swords. He raised his right hand and suddenly swung it downwards. Boom! All of the legendary swords rushed up. The two intimidating spirit legendary swords were at the front, followed by the Heavenly Soul legendary sword, followed by the glorious gold legendary sword, and the amethyst legendary sword. All of the legendary swords exploded out with their own power. All sorts of lights gathered together, forming a sword of light that descended from the sky. Shi Shinzong gritted his teeth and once again unleashed the sword soul. This time, he used all of the spirit energy in his body. In that moment, a massive sword of intense flames flashed and collided with all of the legendary swords. A deafening explosion sounded out, and intense light exploded out, causing everyone's vision to become white. The sound disappeared. It was as if their eardrums had been torn. It was like the explosion of the beginning of the world, causing everything to lose its color and noise. Zhou Xuanji almost fainted. He felt as if his body no longer belonged to him, and he could not control himself as he fell. He gritted his teeth and desperately used the Tianxia map to provide him with spirit energy. Only with great difficulty did he manage to stabilize himself. The intense light dissipated, and the bright world became dim. Dust covered the ground, covering the sky, and covering the sun. It was impossible to see anything. Zhou Xuanji deeply breathed in. He could sense Shi Shinzong's aura. He immediately flew over. Right now, he was like an arrow at the end of its flight, and his flying speed was very slow. Only after a while did he come before Shi Shinzong. Within a massive crater, Shi Shinzong half-knelt on the ground. He gripped the Saint Path sword with both hands and stabbed it into the ground, helping him stabilize his injured body so that he did not fall. Zhou Xuanji looked down at him and said calmly, "You have lost. Come, wonderful book house." Chapter 331. Shi Shinzong didn't tremble, nor did he pant. His life force was about to be used up, and his body was stiff, unable to move. He could not look up and could not see Zhou Xuanji's expression. He said with difficulty, "I can still." Zhou Xuanji frowned. This old guy was a sore loser? Since it's a spar, there's no enmity between us. Do you really want me to kill you before you stop? Zhou Xuanji said coldly. Seeing Shi Shinzong like this made him feel quite disappointed. As a Sword Dao Grandmaster, he should be able to let go of things. Where there is life, there is hope. I'm already a dead man. Shi Shinzong closed his eyes and said calmly, how could he still have the face to walk in this world after losing to a junior? Since he had already died once, he might as well die again. The wind and sand billowed. The two of them seemed to be in the middle of chaos. They couldn't see anyone else, and no one could see them. You have no regrets? Zhou Xuanji asked. Shi Shinzong was very powerful, and if such an expert died, he would have one less opponent. There weren't many people in the world who could be his opponent. Shi Shinzong did not reply. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. Io, still not replying. See if I don't beat you to death. Do you know what the greatest regret of your descendants is? He asked in a melancholy tone. Shi Shinzong asked in confusion, what? Zhou Xuanji sighed and said, your disciple, the Hegeman Sword Emperor, succeeded in becoming a great emperor, but you were just a step away from becoming a great emperor. Isn't that your greatest regret? It's not that the world wants to doubt you, but we believe that you will definitely become a great emperor. Don't tell me you didn't have such regrets before you died. As a man, you already know that there is a higher sky. Don't you want to go and take a look? Besides, you lost to me today. Don't you want to defeat me again? The emotions in his tone fluctuated, and it was extremely provocative. Shi Shinzong lowered his head, making it impossible to see his expression. I don't understand what you've been through, but I've always walked on the path of failure. How many times have I wandered from place to place? How many times have I run for my life? I can even say that I've been a failure since I was born. If I were like you, unable to accept defeat, I'm afraid you wouldn't have lost. Towards the end, Zhou Xuanji's tone became calm. Of course, he knew in his heart that he had won by a large margin. In a one-on-one fight, unless the opponent's realm far surpassed his, he had never lost. Shi Shinzong slowly stood up. Zhou Xuanji's expression changed. What the hell? This guy was recovering his stamina and was listening to his nonsense on purpose. Shi Shinzong raised his head, his gaze as sharp as when he was fighting. His heart skipped a beat. Oh no, another fierce battle? Although he was a little flustered, he appeared calm on the surface. If he could defeat Shi Shinzong once, he could defeat him again. He was only afraid that he would be seriously injured and give someone with ulterior motives an opportunity to take advantage of. I'll wait for you in the upper realm, Shi Shinzong said in a low voice as he looked at Zhou Xuanji, causing him to feel quite stunned. Upper realm? Bang! A pillar of light broke through the billowing dust and landed on his body. He slowly rose up. Ascension. Zhou Xuanji frowned. He ascended just like that? He had originally wanted to take this fellow as a sword slave. He wanted to say something, but hesitated. He wanted to ask, could he be given a chance? Zhou Xuanji, you are indeed more powerful than me. I admit my defeat. From today onwards, I will treat you as my greatest opponent. I will wait for you in the upper realm. Next time, we will fight again. I will wait for you. Shi Shinzong looked down at him and said word by word. A violent gale blew up the dust around them. One was in the sky, while the other was on the ground. Both of them were covered with wounds and were covered with blood. They only had eyes for each other, and they could sense each other's battle intent. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and laughed. This is good too. This is the best result, he mumbled. There were not many powerful cultivators that he acknowledged, and Shi Shinzong was one of them. At this moment, Shi Shinzong's voice suddenly came, sounding domineering and proud. Today I, Shi Shinzong, admit my defeat to Zhou Xuanji wholeheartedly. In my heart, he is the Sword Emperor, and he will become the most powerful Sword Emperor. I will wait for him in the upper realm. One day I will defeat him, because I am the Sword Saint. Rumble. Everyone looked up. Even though the sky was covered by the sand and wind, they could still see the light of ascension. Everyone's face was filled with shock and admiration. They were shocked that Zhou Xuanji could win. They admired Shi Shinzong's carefreeness. Such a sword saint was fully deserving of the title. As Baihao Yisun shielded the beauties from the wind and sand, he muttered, Shi Shinzong. Interesting. Looks like you're going to turn the higher realm upside down. As for Zhou Xuanji, he did not want to comment on him. He always felt that he and Zhou Xuanji were fated to clash. Yang Xindi sighed emotionally and said, I'm afraid we have all greatly underestimated the Sword Emperor. He couldn't help but recall the World Hero Conference. Looking back, he realized how wise he had been. What he said to Zhou Xuanji back then could be exchanged for 10,000 years of peace for Great Shang. The other spectators also came back to their senses. This is too exciting. This battle will be recorded in the annals of history. The Sword Saint lost in strength, but he didn't lose his name. I really want to go to the upper realm to see their next battle. Zhou Xuanji is so young and won't ascend for thousands of years. Let's wait and see how long it will take for them to become number one in the world. Isn't that the best in the world? Can Sunlight Emperor defeat the Sword Saint? The Sword Saint ascended, and after everyone admired him, they began to imagine Zhou Xuanji's future. As long as Zhou Xuanji did not die prematurely, his future would be unimaginable. On the other side, Zhou Xuanji sat on the ground and began circulating his qi to heal his injuries. The light of ascension was still illuminating the dark heavens and earth. Shi Shinzong could no longer see him, but he did not look away. Zhou Xuanji, you might be the person he was talking about. Shi Shinzong smiled slightly. After he figured out he did not feel down. Instead, he felt good. Today's battle would be unforgettable for him. Clap, clap. A round of applause came, and Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes. He saw a boy hopping toward him. He was clapping as he ran. He had an innocent smile on his face. Zhou Xuanji frowned. Numerous legendary swords appeared out of nowhere and protected him. Those who could come to the Sword Emperor Canyon were not simple. Since this boy dared to look for him at this time, he must have come with ill intentions. He thought about it seriously and immediately thought of someone. Lin Chang'e said that there was a boy with Sunlight Emperor who had unfathomable power. Could it be him? Sword Emperor, you are really powerful. Even the Sword Saint was defeated by you. If you continue to grow, the human race's fate will flourish forever, right? Fu Hao giggled. His eyes turned into two crescents. He flipped his right hand, and a dark green dagger appeared in his hand. He still had a harmless smile on his face. Zhou Xuanji said with disdain, "The people around Sunlight Emperor are so lowly. It seems like Sunlight Emperor is not a hero." Whether Fu Hao represented Sunlight Emperor or himself, Zhou Xuanji felt disdain. Calm. Wonderful Bookhouse. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.